acknowledge, hey,
What the fuck, bro? Okay, never mind. Wait, hold on. It does not go to the debate. Please tell me they're not doing the format thing, and I don't want the flow of the debate to be disrupted. So CP versus RR, right? I'm just gonna put counterpoints versus Kafka, okay? That's just whatever, man. It's okay. It's fine.
One moment. Boom, boom.
Man, who the fuck is this femboy ass voice? 4145.
I'm gonna.
I'll call you.
Can Firefox like not, please? 0.5. Okay.
You can see my camera, cool, yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Get that on screen for everybody, and we can do it that way.
I have a femboy voice. I will not answer that question.
Boom, boom.
Have you had much time, Connor, to do any painting recently?
I haven't. There's a guard platoon that's been sitting to my right. There's a company, third-party bits manufacturer called Reptilian Overlords. They make an excellent Catachan or Catachan third-party miniatures. They're amazing. They're beautiful sculpts. But I just haven't had time. Well, I do have time to paint them, but there's just other projects that are sucking up my time right now.
Yeah, I feel you. Are you more of a painter? Do you play the game as well, right?
I have. So I played probably maybe a dozen games, maybe 24 games in my life, which is a shame to say, because I spent like 3 years building a 2,000-point army, meticulously painting each model in high detail, probably spending an average of 3 hours on each model.
Yeah,
and realistically, I've played maybe a dozen to 24 games. And that's one of the things that I realized. It's like, I want to paint, but 3 hours on each model in order to play a game once every 3 months, once every 6 months, that's a shitload of time. So yeah, the pay-to-play ratio for Warhammer is just crazy.
Yeah, you have to enjoy the painting enough, otherwise it's just not worthwhile. I mean, I'm almost identical of a position, except I always played fantasy and Age of Sigmar. But
I noticed that the fantasy boys, they really do love fantasy a lot. And then I also noticed that the other thing you can do is you can just be rich. You can be rich, and then you can pay other
What are they blabbering about? Okay, you know what, I'm just gonna...
other people to pay. Sucks. And so what I did was somebody came up with a beautiful tutorial on how to... those are the kind of cinematic moments that I love about tabletop. It's actually
for sure,
really fun.
Did I get trolled?
If we don't agree on anything this evening, we definitely agree on that.
I recommend that you answer questions directly to provide any supporting evidence or argument. If you're unable to answer the question, I will infer an answer. Your inability to answer will be included in such an inference. If I find your behavior to be disruptive, I'll direct the bailiff to mute your microphone when not directly addressed. I'd also recommend that you refer to the document provided, allowing you to see what options you have as actions, as parties. Objections are available. You can also do a sidebar, which allows you both to address each other directly. We'll go over that again once we get to the end of this long speech.
Correct. We shall. And to everybody watching in the chat, so thank you for watching, firstly, in Connor's and mine's. If you guys want to...
This content wouldn't be possible without ZipZip and Kafka. Okay, for as much as I make fun of them, I mean, they are providing us with extra content, right? Just like how extra Steven content wouldn't be possible without me, extra Discourse content wouldn't be possible without these two. Okay, so please go and support them. Okay.
Questions to ask our parties, Connor and Reason Riffs, type them in my chat. I'm going to be compiling some stuff into an amicus brief, and sprinkled here through and through, I'll be giving these to our judge. And we'll be asking our parties the questions. Questions could be for anybody. I'll keep track of the most interesting ones. If you don't know a message or something, then you will get priority. Yep.
Okay, and so for the parties, or objections, you can object to just about anything, though you need to defend it. All right, if you object, I'm going to pause the line of questioning and we're going to see what your objection is. If I think it was the objection was worthwhile, then I might end that line of questioning. If not, you risk being muted for the rest of that line of interrogation. I'm asking you to use it when you really think you need it, not just when you might disagree with somebody. If you disagree with someone, I will give you every chance to respond. If you guys think that my interrogation is going too slow and you want to just go head to head, whoever is not presenting their argument can call a sidebar whenever they want. You get one. That's going to give you 5 minutes of head-to-head action with the other party. I will not interrupt it unless I think it's getting too hairy or something like that. Connor, you're going to be arguing in the affirmative, so you're going to give the first opening statement and presentation of argument. Reason Riffs, you're going to be presenting second. If you want, you can wait to do your opening statement until you present your argument, or you can do your opening statement directly after Connor's. Which would you prefer?
I think I'll just I'll make my opening statement directly after Connor's. It's relatively short. So.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Okay, and then Connor, whenever you're ready, go right ahead.
Yeah, just so my argumentation is actually lined up with my document.
Sure.
Can I pull it up somehow? Or
Yeah,
can
you
you guys
can-
pull it up somehow?
You can refer to your documents that you have, anything like that. That's fine.
I don't think I saved it. I think I just put it on your guys' drive.
Oh, it should be on
Yeah,
the drive. I can
so-
send you a link to it. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. Can you real quick just
Yeah.
because if I go on like a long-winded, unrelated rant, I don't think that's a good way to
You
start.
can either read your position statement or you can just give one that's not your position statement. Your opening statement is whatever you want it to be. So don't feel like
I put
you're
it in our
defined
chat.
by that position statement.
Okay, and then sorry, real quick. You where did you send it to me? You sent it to me on
In our group DM.
Okay, let me click on it because I do think that I want to keep my position statement relatively grounded in what I've submitted. So, the position is that the tit for tat strategy is a race to the bottom. Republican successes have largely been due to a misframing of political reciprocity using unpopular left-wing behavior as a reason to excuse their own bad behavior. Moderates who decide elections are the people to cater to. Running to the fringes politically on behavior alienates the people you wish most to attract. And what I would additionally, how long is my opening statement?
Let's keep it under 5 minutes.
Okay, I'll easily be.
Oh God, please. Please, not 5 minutes of Connor, please. I'm begging you.
So what I would say is that the right wing has been engaged in egregious behavior. I think we can all agree on that over the past decade. Whether you're talking about the overthrow or attempted overthrow of the government through the fake elector scheme in January 6, 2021, if you're talking about basically the violent language that Trump is currently engaged in today, where he's calling people who called for the military to obey their oaths of office, he called them seditious traitors deserving of death. There's an endless amount of bad behavior. Even right now, we were just reviewing how right-wing media pundits, despite claiming to be socially conservative, are sweeping for an ephemophilic sex trafficking ring in reference to Trump because they're effectively Trump cultists. There's
I don't know why he said ephebophilic. Is it just because he's like being pedantic about it? I'm just gonna assume he's being pedantic about it, okay? And he's not actually one of these ephebophilia, pedophilia guys.
no amount of endless bad behavior from the right wing. That is not in dispute. What I would argue, though, is that tit for tat, while it can be a viable strategy in the fact that reciprocity is typically how humans operate, within the political binary, if the left was to argue for tit.
He's a Fushops fan. He might actually be. He does, for as much as he hates me, for as much as Counterpoint doesn't want anything to do with me, he has said before that my anti-fan coverage is unrivaled. It's not close.
For tat, then you would need to do the same things. You would need to try to overthrow the Republic of the United States. You would need to sweep for ephebophilic sex trafficking rings. You would need to use propaganda in order to lie
I'm glad you recognize me as the master.
to the American people to win politics. And I think this is
But he calls you a pedo? No? Yes, he calls me a pedo.
how we are going to destroy the Republic if we engage for tit for tat. Also, I think it opens up uncomfortable boxes. If we engage in politics as a binary,
Can we not?
where there's
Can
this thing
we
called the
not,
left,
please?
and there's this thing called the right,
Okay.
and that is the political tribe to which we are set, then within the past 6 months, there was a left-winger who shot a right-winger and killed them. Are we
You're
actually
locked
going to be
in.
advocating
Mhm.
that we should engage in political assassination because the other side did so? This is why I believe that these behavioral arguments are a race to the bottom, and it's going to destroy our republic. Actually, one more point before I give up my time. Also, these things have had deleterious effects. They've had negative effects on the person advocating for them. Destiny has argued that rhetorical tit for tat is necessary in order to fight fire with fire in reference to the right.
Are they calling me that? Because I like to be smarter. That's why.
Wing. Well, guess what? When he fought fire with fire, when he said that Republicans are acting so poorly, they should be afraid of violence in reference to their advocacy for poor positions, what ended up happening? He got demonetized. As a result, he's a less effective rhetorician and advocate because he was civilly sanctioned for his behavior.
He's trying so hard to have counter positions to Stevens. No, I don't think he's doing that. I think that when he agrees with Steven on something, when Counterpoints agrees with Steven on something, he will not try to find a debate with him. But if he disagrees with something, like you can just probably like wager that they're going to end up fighting on it on stream at some point. I think this is a genuine disagreement, obviously, right?
So once again, like this is a race to the bottom. It's going to destroy our republic. It's fraying our social fabric. It has negative consequences. And I don't even necessarily believe that you guys believe your own position. So with that, I'll yield the floor / time.
Wait, real quick. I apologize, everybody. I misspoke earlier saying that Connor was in the affirmative. It's Reason Riff's in the affirmative. Connor is in the negative. So Connor, thank you for your opening statement. Reason Riff, let's go ahead and get your opening statement. Please include, and once you're done with that, we're going to go over what we're going to use as tit for tat for our definition. I still want to hear your opening statement without it. I want to have a quick discussion with both parties about what we are going to consider as tit for tat for this discussion, and then we're going to go into arguments. So Reason Riff, you go right ahead.
Okay. Well, I appreciate your opening statement, Connor, and understand a little bit more where we agree and disagree. So I will perhaps try and really address you in this regard. So I think one of the key things is to delineate here between what is rhetorically framed as what is being said and what the actions actually are. So we can see that actions aren't always the same as what is being described, but especially by the other side. And frankly, to some extent, we have to ignore that because that can always be framed however it wants to be framed. The other question is then, okay, if it's not a tit for tat strategy, if you want to be critical of it, you have to pose a genuine alternative. And I don't see a genuine, reasonable alternative that's not some variant of tit for tat, which I think we'll go into the definition in a minute, we'll clarify.
He's still happy to call you a lollipedo. I have a very high tolerance of people. I know that sounds ironic coming from me, but I think from everything that has happened so far, I hope that it shows when I'm interacting with the space, right? Because when I'm interacting with the space, like I'm like treating everyone with the utmost patience. With the utmost patience. It's not even close. Nobody is as patient as me, okay, when it comes to treating other people who are like trying to beef with me. Darius trying to pick fights. All right, I'm not engaging. Okay, I'm not engaging most of the time. Just trolling him sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. It's just something you get used to. Okay.
We've also seen historically, and this is something we do agree on, in the US context, and it's not just in the US context we see this, but that the Republicans have misbehaved and been atrocious and have slowly eroded and destroyed democracy in the US. I argue that in some cases the Democrats have aided and abetted this through appeasement. And I think realistically that's the alternative is tit for tat or appeasement at this point. So there isn't really many more things to say on the matter. There is the actual application of the game theory of tit for tat, and that has its ambiguities in itself, and I think that's a place where we disagree, and probably agree more than we disagree if we look at how I would consider that being applied. And then there are variants of tit for tat for more complex models. So the original tit for tat was between two players, and it was simply a binary system of either defect or aid and cooperate. But that doesn't include.
Well, you just groaned when Connor went a tiny bit off topic and you ban people for the smallest things. Yeah, because I like to control my environment, right? I only want to engage as much as I could engage without actually affecting how much I want to stream, right? So, like, for example, in my chat and in my audience, I will ban people if they are annoying me even a little bit, just mainly because I want to control the environment in such a way where I am not triggered constantly when I go to my own home, right? My virtual home, right? So-called. I know, sounds terminally online, okay? But if I'm venturing outside of it, I have enough regulation to choose what I want to interact with in order to minimalize harm to myself and maximize what I want to see, right? Yeah, it's different. So, like, for example, when I'm like groaning over Connor, it's because people like it when I groan at Connor, okay? And when I complain about him, and when like I'm saying how much of a bitch he is, okay? Which I do all believe. However, notice that most of the time, vast majority of the time, I'm not going to be watching counterpoints off stream. I'm not doing it, right? Because I know that I'm going to get frustrated when I watch counterpoints off stream, so I'm not going to do it, right? But when I'm doing it on stream, it's because I expect to be frustrated and I expect to provide entertainment, and people expect me to do so. So these are all different things, okay?
Noise, for example, and so you've got generous tit for tat, which is an offshoot of tit for tat itself, and I include.
And by the way, this is not easy to do, okay? I hope you realize it's not easy to do. It takes a lot of like mental practice and therapy to get where I am in order to know how to do something like that, okay? Not everyone knows how to do it. Many content creators do not know how to do it. So
in my description here, generous tit for tat, for example. So I'm not stating that tit for tat is a perfect strategy in all applications. I'm not saying it's always perfectly clear as to how it will be utilized, but there are clearly cases historically where it hasn't been utilized, and it's only aided and allowed the Republicans to misbehave. And I use the analogy of a child that keeps throwing its toys out of the pram. Do you keep putting that toy back in the pram, or do you at some point no longer put the toy back in the pram such that the child stops learning to throw the toys out of the pram? So I think on that analogy, I'll close my statement.
Thank you. Okay, and someone over.
I want to see Foods and Connor hold hands and frolic. I actually like Connor. I mean, yeah, he calls me a pedophile. All right, he pedo jackets me, but I actually like Connor. I know it sounds kind of crazy, just mainly because it's like, how could you like someone who like is pedo jacketing you? Like I said, I'm built different. Okay.
Talking about tit for tat strategy, I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing. It's a strategy in which we have two parties, and they have the option of collaborating or acting selfishly to the detriment of the other party. They have the choice to make one of those two things, and neither side knows what the other side is going to make that choice until the choice happens. Okay, and whenever we're saying tit for tat,
we're not
we
the
say
same.
That because of we're going to make the same choice as the other side's previous choice, essentially, right? So if the other side said collaborate, we are going to collaborate. If the other side, their previous choice was they're going to act selfishly, we're going to act selfishly, and we're going to do that until they start acting like they're going to cooperate again. Okay, is that a fair summation of what we're talking about for tit for tat strategy?
Yeah.
That's fair, but are you not worried about the bubble safe space you're creating? I know you want to feel safe in your own internet home, but surely you don't want your community to be a bunch of dick sucks. Brother, you have no idea how much my community makes fun of me and how much my community criticizes me. You do not know, okay? Have you been in my server before? Have you been in my chat before? I don't...
I would maybe add that it has an implication of like negative reciprocity.
You have no idea.
Where oftentimes it's used negatively, but I also agree that it's not necessarily negative. So, for instance, like you said, if the other part becomes collaborative, you mirror their collaboration, and the hope is that eventually they will mirror collaboration.
Okay, yeah, I just want to make sure we understand that. And then, are there any other terms that we want to make sure we're defining now so that we don't get lost in a fight over definitions later?
You're right. I don't know. I just started watching recently. Like, dude, people still actively ship me with Steven. Like, I don't know what you want. I don't ban any of these people. What the fuck?
I didn't see any other ones, but if you guys think, if you think there is, I'm happy to explore it right now.
Yes, I mean, I wasn't particularly clear in my opening statement, so forgive me if it's my lack of clarity that's brought this about. But the reciprocity could be in reciprocating cooperation, but it can also be reciprocating affection. So in both cases, that's a reciprocal action. You're mirroring in terms of the behavior in terms of whether you're not cooperating or cooperating. So defection is a synonym for non-cooperation. So if I use defection, I mean non-cooperation in this sense. And the other thing was that there was this notion of generous tit for tat. And to clarify this is given in the evidence of the offshoots of tit for tat. It simply means that 5 to 10% of the time, which is one of the optimal percentages they found, if you just randomly cooperate occasionally rather than purely reciprocating, this can be a little bit more beneficial than pure tit for tat. But I would argue, so sorry.
We can get into that once we're in your argument. Connor, I apologize. I know I said you're going first, but we do like the affirmative argument to go first, just so they can make the argument and then the affirmative can come in, or the negative can come in. So, Reason Rest, we're going to go to you first. So, I appreciate your argument, though I would like to hear why you think, or how you would explain that tit for tat is not a mutually assured destruction. If I do tit for tat, I'm not looking down the barrel of everything being destroyed. And why does it not result in that?
Well, from a purely theoretical standpoint, which is not the only standpoint, but it's one that's sort of the clearest. When you implement a tit for tat strategy, you discourage the other side from non-cooperation by making it less rewarding. And so you see that if you implement this kind of strategy, rather than purely cooperating or purely defecting and non-cooperating, that the other side is more likely to actually go towards cooperation in the medium to long term. In practice, we've seen this historically. When appeasement has been put in place, it's very nice.
So, I think in order to argue tit for tat, you need to learn how to argue for things that are in the greater context and down the line. Because otherwise people will not be able to see the immediate benefits of tit for tat, right? People will, like, for example, it's not like Hutch is wrong. It's not like Hutch is wrong. And it's not like a bunch of people are wrong when they are saying, well, tit for tat and trying to antagonize the Republicans will result in them trying to oppose you in the immediate future, right? For them to take action against you in some really harmful way in the immediate future. Because you're not wrong on that. However, you're missing the bigger picture, right? Down the line, I don't want to live in a world where it's okay to have all this terrible shit because of the double standards that's going on. You have to begin to fix that poisoning right now, right? Because if you don't start fixing that, if you don't start fixing it now, by the time later on, when it's very clearly too late, right? Which, I mean, might already be too late. It might already be too late, right? Which is also part of the problem. By the time we get there, it's impossible to fix the issue. It's impossible to fix the poisoning that's going on, right? If that makes sense. You want to actually start administering the antidote right now. Yeah. The reason why I call it a poison in the first place, the reason why I call it a poison in the first place is because it acts like a poison, right? It might give off some small symptoms that you can just like dismiss here and there, but eventually the poison is going to seep in and you're going to be feeling, and then by that time, it's going to be too late because the poison has settled in and you're going to die, right? However, Obviously, if you go to the doctor and you go to the emergency room immediately, it's going to inconvenience you, right? It's going to inconvenience you by going to the doctor, right? Taking up time slot in your life to go to the doctor or to see the surgeon or to see someone who specializes in toxicology kind of shit. Yeah, that's a waste of time in a way, but you are saving future time and you're taking care of yourself for the future, right? You are sacrificing time right now. You are late to work right now because you don't want to wait until the poison has settled in, right? You don't want to wait until the cancer has progressed to stage 4, right? Like if you see a lump, maybe that's a little bit inconvenient at times, right? But you don't want to chance that when you have a lump. You don't want it to progress to stage 4 and metastasize, right? The same thing I feel like for the double standards poisoning, right? It's comparable to like a cancer or like a poison where you have to be able to counter it now. You can't do it later. You have to start chemotherapy right now, right? It's better to start chemotherapy at stage 3 than it is to start it at stage 4, right? Chances are you will not survive stage 4, right?
In the short term, there's no suffering, right? But in the longer term, it means the other side continues to defect, to grow, and to take up and use more and more of the good nature of the other side. So it's about the medium to long-term perspective. The short term, that there can be some disadvantage. There is, of course, a loss of easiness and certainty in the shortest of terms, but in the longer term, it actually reduces the overall suffering and loss that can occur, and is often minimal. So,
is there a chance to cure it? I think you should try to cure it as much as possible, of course, because right now we don't know, right? Like if you get diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, right? The chances of you surviving are very, very low. It's one of the deadliest cancers out there, right? You might as well start writing an obituary. However, at the same time, it's not like you're going to be like, it's not like everyone is going to be like, well, you know what? I think it's completely hopeless. There is literally no point in me trying anything at this point, and I'm going to prepare for death. Because I would wager a large amount of people think that they are the ones that can make it. A very, very large amount of people, way more than 5%. 5% is the survival rate, by the way, past 5 years. Way more than 5% will think that they're going to be a part of the 5%, right? That is necessary, but you need to start right now. You can't wait 2 days or 3 days afterwards, right? Yeah.
Shown
and frankly, it doesn't matter, right? You're going to do it anyway.
Theoretical basis, but it's also, you can see historical examples of that. I also gave some of those as evidence.
Okay, so Connor, whenever I've heard your arguments about tit for tat, and I don't think I've heard you make the mutually assured destruction argument. Are you worried at all about that, about this? And maybe not necessarily like in the moment, they're going to immediately destroy each other, but kind of run away. I think you said a race to the bottom, and I think that's similar kind of to this mutually assured destruction.
Survive,
like,
okay.
In your mind, you think the tit for tat's going to just force us into a civil war that is so horrible that it just basically ends America? Is
the cancer we are talking about Israel? No, what the fuck? Israel is the cure, okay?
Am I summarizing that correctly?
I'm hoping we're smarter than that. But yeah, like as an example, I appreciate Reason Riff's not being autistic in his definition, where for instance, something that I thought was brought up was interesting, that tit for tat with 10% or whatever reciprocity is actually something that's like a better game theory or something like that. I appreciate the lack of autism in reference to that argument. But yeah, like if we were being hyper fixated on tit for tat, then we would say that everything the Republicans have done should be negatively mirrored by the opposition. And I think there are some behaviors that are so negative from the right wing, they should not be reciprocated. I would cite the fake elector scheme. Actually, gerrymandering, we should probably talk about at some point. There's a whole host of bad behaviors that the right wing has engaged in that if reciprocated by the left, it would probably mean the doom of the republic.
Well, I think that leads into kind of my second question to Reason Riffs, where, whether we get to that end state of doom of the republic, I think that you would agree that in the short term, at the very least, there's a destabilizing effect to tit for tat. We're asking very powerful groups to act in, harmful ways, right? I mean, there's going to be negative externalities coming from this, and how do you gauge that, and then make that determination that that's okay versus other strategies that might not be as destabilizing?
Well, I think this is a good opportunity to make a point that I felt that Connor's argument was somewhat of a straw man argument in regards to framing the negativity of the reciprocal action.
I'm not convinced that Connor's understanding of game theory is enough for this convo. Yeah, Connor fundamentally doesn't understand game theory whatsoever. I watched a video where he went over the stream where Steven explained game theory, and he just simply does not get it. He simply does not get it. Yeah, like he misunderstands the entire point. Yeah, which of course he disagrees with Steven, right? Because he doesn't even know what it means.
Because
Yeah.
and it's understandable, because in the theory, you just defect, right? And a defect looks like a
Look, I'm not saying he's stupid, but he's stupid.
defect,
Okay?
and it looks like the same thing, which it is in terms of the theory. But in practice, there are many ways in which you can defect. So you don't have to replicate the means, but the magnitude and the direction, right? So what they might do that's considered illegal, you don't have to break the law just because they broke the law, but you have to non-cooperate to the same strength and level, such that it harms them as much as you harmed yourself. So I believe Democrats, frankly, are more intelligent than Republicans, and are able thus, and with a level of self-control Republicans don't have, and thus are able to reciprocate in a way of defecting and not cooperating with them, but in a way that's a little bit more intelligent. And I can give you examples of that.
Okay, well, one second. I think that let's start with the wide view with that. Connor, what do you think about this idea that he's presenting here, where it's a tit for tat, but maybe it's not that we're going to perfectly mirror their actions, but we're going to say, okay, that action was of this magnitude and it caused this amount of harm to us, so we're going to take a legal, maybe a institutional based action that will harm them, to the same magnitude, right? So like the shutdown, maybe the shutdown that was legal for the Democrats to do, and let's say they do that in response to illegal actions of the Republicans, but the magnitude of harm to each party is equal. How do you view that kind of tit for tat?
Yeah, I think that's infinitely preferable, obviously.
Okay.
And as a matter of fact, I think that would probably be the differentiation between you use the word appeasement. I'm not for appeasement. I don't like appeasement. I don't think it's smart. I think that power abhors a vacuum. And I was going to bring up elections as kind of like the reciprocal power that should respond to the abuses of the Republicans. However, as an example, I would bring up. I want to bring forward gerrymandering, if you'll indulge me real quick.
I'm happy
So
to.
gerrymandering, we live in a representative republic. And gerrymandering, as far as I understand it, is drawing borders around districts specifically so that your political opposition does not gain seats that it would otherwise be entitled to. And that's gerrymandering. Right. And so there were conservative governments, conservative state governments, that were openly saying, we're going to gerrymander on purpose, and we are going to rob the Democrats of 10 to 15 seats. And California responded with Proposition 50, which is legal. It was voted for by the public. The governor signed it into law. It's a perfectly legal action. And they engaged in gerrymandering that effectively, I think, nullified and might have scared the Republicans off of that dangerous course of action. But I think we can both agree that while legal and while tit for tat, if the Republicans follow through on their desire to gerrymander districts, we still have disenfranchised voters. And so that's kind of like the concession that I want people to understand, is that when we're engaging in this reciprocity, if we're talking about losing the Republic, then obviously gerrymander, because losing the Republic is more important than disenfranchised voters. But we still need to acknowledge that negative harm that we have done, because now we have disenfranchised voters in red states and we have disenfranchised voters in blue states, and the system is kind of fucked in a way that's difficult to unfuck. And so that is where my frustration with...
That's not even true. That's not even true, right? Because MAGA people are completely disenfranchised. Disfranchised. Like, you're talking about the disfranchised point, that's fine. But MAGA people are differentiated. They still vote for Trump, and they still won the election. So I don't know why you're saying this, as if like we disenfranchised. Here's the thing: if people don't believe in democracy, democracy does not work. At the same time, it feels like MAGA moves more pragmatically than we do. So
with Stephen, because let's be real, this is about Stephen's course of action. Stephen's
Sure.
course of action, number one, it didn't seem to recognize the harm being done by playing into negative tit for tat. It also didn't seem to carry the nuance that's being brought up here today, where maybe you reciprocate part of the time in order to encourage cooperation, and then also maybe you do legal shit. I feel like that nuance was not forwarded by the person who sparked this conversation.
who is already playing Druid? Wait, is Druid out now? Holy shit. Wait, really? Is Druid out? I might play it, who knows?
That's fair. And Connor, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're advocating, at the very least, or at least are saying that you're giving approval of some kind of virtuous tit for tat.
We'll see.
I think
We'll
that's
see.
kind of what we're discussing here.
Well, and
I think
legality is one of my principal concerns. I would say legality was always one of my principal concerns, because when you say, oh, I'm going to engage in tit for tat or whatever. I don't think like Stephen's a criminal, but at the same time, like Tucker Carlson technically doesn't commit crimes, even though he engages in what I believe to be stochastic rhetoric that would lead to violence. So I don't want Stephen to become a stochastic rhetorician that leads to violence in order to legally tit for tat with Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, I think that's fine. Let's table that line real quick because I do want to come back to Reason Riffs.
No, yeah, I mean, you're saying this because you don't want Stephen to be killed, sure, but I mean, but if he's not practicing what he is preaching, right? He's just simply practicing what he preaches, right? If he believes in tit for tat, he's engaging in tit for tat, right? He says that we should practice tit for tat, and he practices tit for tat. I mean, I have to imagine that Stephen accepts that there is absolutely a possibility in which he dies, right? That's why I'm assuming that Stephen is also wearing like maybe a vest under that clothing. But you know, nothing's going to protect him from a neck shot, right? Same thing. But yeah, who knows?
Reason, I believe you had something. If you want to,
like, let him be an adult. And part of the adult action, part of the adult anti-action, is yeah, part of being an adult is also accepting that you might die. Okay.
give me a quick response to that. That's fine. I have another question that's going to follow up what we just discussed.
I would like to respond to that because let's not confuse Destiny's ambiguity with having contradicted, frankly, anything of what I'm suggesting of the strategy here. He's never really spoken in detail about the application of the strategy. Moreover, in terms of the general tit-for-tat strategy, we've had our 5, or forgive me for saying I'm not an American, but you've had, as someone on the good side in America, the 5-10% of the generous part of the generous tit-for-tat. And now is the time, frankly, for some harsher tit-for-tat. And I feel like for a decade now, Democrats have feared the harm in the short term, and it's caused or played a role in the harm in the long term. That might be something that Destiny would disagree with me on, but I don't want to put words in his mouth. But he has been ambiguous for good and for bad, which has been provocative. But it hasn't been that he's staunchly taken something contradictory to what I've said, or frankly, staunchly said anything particularly terrible. I can't speak for his intent. That's speculation, and you would object.
He wrote a note. Yeah.
I think we're not going to read some implication. I don't think we'll read intent into Destiny's speech, but I think we can. We can say the negative space that's left by him not clarifying is not to his benefit in Connor's argument. He's saying that negative space puts Connor on edge, the sense that he doesn't know necessarily who's going there. And with that, I would like to ask, I think Reason Riffs, you would obviously also agree with the virtuous form of tit for tat, but when it comes to tit for tat strategy,
objection. In terms of definition here, there is no such thing as a virtuous form or non-virtuous form of tit for tat. In terms of the strategy, we're talking about application, but that really isn't necessarily the debate here. We're talking.
Yeah, that's not the debate here. That's not the debate here, right? If we're talking about tit for tat, we're just talking strictly about like matching energy, right? We're talking about matching energy. We're not talking about a
priori whether tit for tat is a bad strategy. Right?
Well, what was
true? He's right. Oh shit! No, this is a good point.
No. I'm only saying in the sense that I don't think there's any part of the quote the novel term we're saying here of saying if you want to respond to their actions with only legal actions right now. That's not something that you would necessarily disagree
legal
with.
Or moral. Can we agree on legal or moral?
Sure. But then I want us to now move into the next part and say, okay, we've carved out that area. The tit for tat makes sense there. Okay.
I mean, again, this is why I think like I'm not even sure if Connor is like I'm not even sure if Connor's like I'm not sure if he understands what Stephen meant in the first place, right? Like this is what I mean.
When I'm looking at tit for tat strategy now, am I saying, are we then extending it also to violence? And if not, let's say violence for immediate self-defense. I don't think anybody here has a huge issue with that as far as tit for tat strategy. But then beyond that, tit for tat for violence outside of immediate self-defense. How do you feel about that? Reason, I'm not asking you to Fed post right now. We're speaking hypothetically. We're saying in an environment in which there is a tit for tat strategy, not even a political one, but tit for tat strategy involving violence that is not immediate self-defense. How do you view that in your version of tit for tat?
Well, I don't think violence, in terms of if you anticipate violence, you can always frame it as defensive, right? And I'd have to be so hypothetical in any applicable context right now to suggest that violence is warranted. But the idea of just outwardly saying violence is always wrong as part of the strategy, I think it's a bit like saying murder is always wrong and then giving a bunch of exceptions. So I think it'd be disingenuous to say that violence is always wrong, even if it's not viewed directly as against your.
Listen, I would like to take back. I would like to take back what I said about him, about the Who Megalo point. I'm sorry, I did not recognize your game.
harm in the short term.
Let me phrase this. Let me phrase this maybe a little bit easier. Does your version is this tit for tat strategy we're discussing right now? Is it the alternative to violence, or is it within the system in which violence could happen at some point? Or are we doing this to try to avoid violence in your mind?
Tit for tat is a tool, okay? And how you use that tool can be in an intelligent way, which is what I was trying to pose before, which I think is what the synonym for virtuous in this regard.
Sure.
But in terms of how that tool applies, it's very much contextual, right? And in the context we're talking about now in terms of the US, that I can see no space for anything near violence, physical or even verbal. And that's another issue, by the way, the rhetorical side of things. So it depends on how speculative you want to be with this. I mean, we can be very speculative, but I don't think that's
I can address this without
well, one second, Connor. I think that's fine. Reason I don't want us to get too deep into the violence thing, Fed posting aside and other things. I think it's a little too much, but I do want to just touch on this point with you and Connor real quick. Connor, I know that you own and make guns, and I know that you are a Second Amendment defender and self-defense advocate. However, I want to hear your thoughts on this, because I think you would agree that tit for tat, immediate harm, violence makes sense. In your mind, do you see the tit for tat as a alternative to violence, or do you think that it is a tool, like Reason Riff might argue, and say that that's not really an appropriate question to ask about it? I think
I can answer all of this without Fed posting, just because of my law enforcement background. So effectively, like what I'm advocating for with liberals in particular is like somebody said, legal self-defense. So we should not embrace violence. Most people who embrace violence are either psychopaths, sociopaths, sadistic, traumatic, they're traumatized, there's something. We should never embrace violence, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be prepared for violence. And so what I think is that...
No, the problem with being prepared for violence is that you're always going to be the ones that are responding, right? And this is why I think, like, I'm not entirely sure whether or not, like, Connor misunderstands what Stephen is referring to. It's okay to be self-defensive, okay? Nobody disagrees with that. Nobody disagrees with that, right? If we're only talking about self-defense, there's no conversation to be had. But the issue is that we are basically making the argument that in this prolonged war of attrition, at some point, you have to make the move, right? Like at some point, you also have to make the move first, right? That's essentially what's being argued. Because, okay, I think there's a really good analogy, all right? There's a siege being laid upon the capital city, all right? And the siege has lasted, okay, let's just say Ba Sing Se is being sieged upon by the Fire Nation for like 365 days, right? So every single time the Fire Nation goes in and attacks, they make an offensive move to breach the walls or something. The Earth Nation warriors push them back, right? They manage to push them back. They are acting in self-defense all the time, right? However, that's not a winning strategy, right? Because you're constantly on the defense. You're constantly doing the defensive thing in the siege. But if you're the victim of the siege, you should be attacking the enemy camps out there, right? You should be sending Earth warriors out to attack the Fire Nation camps, right? Rather than staying behind and doing jack shit, right? Except for when you're defending your territory, right? Yeah, that's the same thing. Isn't that Russia invading Ukraine? It literally is. Yeah, it literally is, yes. Actually, it is, yes. We need a blind baddie? She's 8. Kidding.
Liberal or progressive allergy to firearms and self-defense topics is actually a weakness that conservatives who are more comfortable with violence potentially could take advantage of. So shoring up that weakness is important. I do think that any violence that does happen should be legal and defensive.
Exactly.
But just even arguing from a historical perspective, there's of course times where extra legal violence could be justified, and I'll use Colombia as an example. In Colombia, law enforcement was so corrupt where either half of them were anti-cartel militias and half of them were bought and paid for by the cartel, that the anti-cartel militias and civilians eventually formed a militia group that went on to fight with Pablo Escobar, because Pablo Escobar was consistently getting out of prison, getting reduced sentences, being ignored by corrupt officials, participating in assassinations, participating in terrorism, participating in the killing of cops. It was so egregious that effectively the social contract had been violated to the point that extra legal and extrajudicial violence was taken upon by the citizenry because legality and morality were no longer lined up. Now, that being said, I think I'm with Reason that we're not there yet. There are definitely lines that MAGA could cross where they effectively take the entirety of the republic and throw it out the window. And if they threw, like, for instance, let's say Trump said, I'm dictator for life. And enough of the military and enough of Trump's base said, yeah, he's dictator for life. We don't care what the Constitution says. At that point, it's time.
Okay, that's fine. Let's.
No. Ideally, we want to prevent that, right? Like, if we see it trending in that direction, we want to prevent that, right? You don't want to wait until like they already started a genocide for you to act, right? You want to prevent the genocide in the first place, no? That's the way I look at it. If you see that it's trending in that direction, I think it's time to do something. You don't want to be like fucking eating rats and cockroaches, right? Preparing and fucking cleaning your gun. Yeah.
We'll go ahead and pause that. We'll stray back away from the violence talk. Reason. Let's look into. I'm sorry, Mr. Riffs. Let's go into something that I want to make sure I understand why we would advocate for tit for tat over other strategies. And I'm going to give you something to contend with. Why do you think that a tit for tat strategy in the current political climate is better than?
Look, you're saying, oh, it's finally to attack Hitler. It's finally for the Jew. It's finally time for the Jews to attack Hitler, after he has already industrialized genocide. Okay. I mean, I guess that's kind of bad for all the Jews that are already rounded up and dying. It's like, okay.
In a civil disobedience. If we need to, I can define civil disobedience as we want to discuss it, unless both parties feel comfortable discussing without one.
Can I just reply to Connor's comment before?
Let's do a quick reply, and then
it's really quick. Simply to say, I actually think in terms of the bar for violence, we sound basically in agreement on that. Okay, so
we're cooked. We are cooked.
Basically, voicing my own position with regards to that. So sorry, can you restate your comment, your question?
Sure. So I'm wondering why we would use in the current political climate in America, why we should be advocating for a tit for tat strategy over civil disobedience.
Well, again, this is let's delineate civil disobedience from tit for tat. I mean, civil disobedience could be.
Hold on. Yeah, they're not mutually exclusive, right? Civil disobedience could be tit for tat, right? If the conservatives invade the Capitol building on January 6th, I think you should invade the Capitol building back. Why not? I can't believe I'm saying this, but I think that you can totally make an argument that you should also enact your own January 6th at this point, right? Tit for tat, yeah?
An implementation of tit for tat, right? Whether it be strikes of.
Don't be too allergic to having balls, okay?
The federal workforce could be very effective if the Democrats called for that. So tit for tat in itself, as I say, is just a tool. How you apply it takes a little bit of imagination. And I think that a lack of imagination and how that's applied historically in the past 10 years has been true of the Democrats. So forgive the lack of clarity with regards to my memory with this, but if you look at Supreme Court justices and the blocking in, was it 2016, just before, I think Trump had already been elected, but Obama was trying to push forward his nominee, and it was blocked by the Republicans. And then when Amy Coney was coming in very, very similar circumstances towards the end of the term, the Democrats didn't bother to push against that. And this is a great example of what I mean. I think Democrats need to be have a bit of more of a spine and threaten things that in the short term may be a little bit uncomfortable.
If Connor is a liberal, that he thinks that you need some kind of consequentialist argument to punish evildoers. Connor is a liberal in Connor is a liberal in denial. I think that he will never define himself as a liberal, and I'm okay with that. Because I know that he's too stupid to know things like that. But from all intents and purposes, from my perspective, yeah, he's a liberal.
Well, and I don't mean anything illegal here, but it could also be civil disobedience in again, a non-violent way. But that's about the implementation side of tit for tat, not about tit for tat itself.
Okay, well, so then you're saying tit for tat's a tool. It feels like tit for tat might be kind of an ethos or a strategy by which we're applying these other things, right? Like I feel like tit for tat is saying like you're talking about the application of your different kind of smaller tools or strategies, right? So I'm imagining you would have the same answer for, say, nonviolence, akin to kind of the Indian Revolution or American Civil Rights. You'd say the same thing. Mm-hmm. That would just be folded into the tit for tat rather than being its own independent strategy. Exactly.
I think black people in America today have the rights they have because tit for tat was employed.
So, Connor, whenever I'm thinking about tit for tat, and you're we've discussed this kind of virtue tit for tat that might be what you're advocating for. In your mind, do you see an alternative to replace tit for tat with right here? Do you think that whenever we see the Republicans do something, incredibly heinous, like very, very, very clearly attacking the Republic, trying to destroy the Republic, do you see a different strategy from tit for tat, or just a different way of applying it than what you've been hearing advocated?
No, not trying to be like, oh, blood sports debate, you suck, but like
moderator is a yapper. I think the way that they structure this show, and it's specifically how they structure it. You know what? I don't really have a preference for stuff like this. However, I will say, like, I will say most of the time you're going to be debating Kafka. I think Kafka probably made this show on purpose, so then he has a chance to debate everyone. That's my conspiracy theory, okay? Actually, that's not even a conspiracy theory. I think it's just true. Might be, maybe, I don't know. Because in my opinion, Kafka made this show on purpose, just so then he has an excuse to debate as many people as possible, even though they are trying to debate each other, right? I think that's my read on Kafka. Okay.
No, this is infinitely more reasonable than what Stephen is advocating for, and I do think that like reciprocity, if you're being smart, is intelligent. So for instance, like let's say that Prop 50 had been proposed by California, and then every Republican freaked out and they said, "Whoops, our bad. We didn't mean to open up Pandora's box. We're backing off of that topic." Then the tit for tat response, I think, would be not the Democrats proceeding with Prop 50. They would have said, "Oh, okay, we backed off of the cliff. Let's back off of the cliff as well." And so that's still legal. That's still reciprocal. It's still intelligent. I'm okay with that.
That's what Wick does? Yeah, but he does it without stating that it's part of the rules to do that. Because at least when it comes to Kafka, that is the structure of the format, right? That's the structure of the format. What water are you drinking? Agua? I don't know. But when it comes to this, yeah, again, he states that this is the format. This is the format they're going with. So it's not like you're going to be surprised. But when you're debating Wick, so-called debating, by the way, got him. When you're debating, you're not actually like, you didn't know that he was going to come in, right?
I think that due to the lack of clarity,
that's the difference. Okay, spicy.
I was probably operating with the autistic definition of number one. There's never reciprocity because effectively, like reciprocity would be, some people call that appeasement, right? Where, but I think that what Reason said is that maybe 10% of the time, maybe 5% of the time, you actually show a willingness to collaborate in order to encourage collaboration. That's brilliant. And then also adding in the safeguards of legality and adding in the safeguards of morality. I think also means that just because somebody on your team gets politically assassinated doesn't mean that you politically assassinate the opposite side. It means that, let's say that person was
Wake pulls a Piers Morgan, yes,
is in charge of logistics for the DNC or something, and there's some kind of like protest.
Any Wick haters in the chat? Any Wick haters in chat? Where are my Wickers at?
Test that you can do that would fuck up.
Okay, that.
The logistics of the RNC, and so because they took through extra legal and violence, they take out your logistics capacity, you take out their logistics capacity through legal, moral means. I'm not opposed to that whatsoever. That's obviously intelligent. But I just need to emphasize this. Stephen himself, and I know I'm involving a third party. Just as an example, yesterday we were.
I'm the biggest Wick hater. Good, keep it up.
Debating this last night. He was saying that the correct tit for tat in reference to what's going on in the American government right now is convicting all of the Trump administration of insurrection, because by participating in the Trump administration, they have been supporting an insurrectionist. And then when I asked him for like specific crimes that have been committed by members of the cabinet that would warrant this criminal charge and barring from office, he got really fucking vague with it. And not only did he get vague with it, I think that he was implying that we'll fabricate a case, and if they get convicted, they get convicted. And for me,
so objection speculation.
We're actually going to take this objection.
Oh, objection speculation. Someone's been taking notes from my debate, dude.
And in real quick, Connor, because I actually came in.
Kino, yes, true, Kino.
Called right after you left, and just.
I mean, like my debate with the Hobbit guy, right? Hobbit follower. I was like, objection, speculation, Your Honor. Objection, speculation, Your Honor. Objection, Your Honor. Speculation.
Discuss the legal methods by which it could be done. That doesn't take away from the fact that that's what Destiny advocated with his own statements. So I'm not going to say that you're incorrect to say that. But we will say that I think that you're right to say that he is not advocating for the legal methods in that time when he said it. However, I'm going to actually agree with Reason Riffs here on the speculation aspect of, I think that we are talking about that negative space, right? I think we've already all come together and said, hey, there's some negative space in Destiny's statements that make certain people uneasy. I think that's fair to make that critique here. But I don't think anybody here's going to defend that. So we don't need to, I don't want to explore that negative space too much anymore. Connor, if you got anything more you want to say on that, let's avoid the negative space. You can. I've got 2 more questions for Mr. Riffs, and then I'm going to come back over to you for that negative argument.
Yeah, sure.
Riffs.
I would just say that these additional intelligent caveats, I think, like so, for instance, just keeping it on the topic, tit for tat sounds like negative reciprocity. Adding in the caveat of cooperation to encourage cooperation some of the time within game theory, awesome. And then also keeping it legal and moral, that actually alleviates a majority of my objections to the strategy.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Points. Mr. Riffs?
Coward.
Whenever we're talking about cooperation, very specifically in the American political context, it seems like we're kind of begging a question or baking in some ideas by saying cooperation, because how are we supposed to say that it's cooperation when a lot of the times to the Republicans it's probably going to feel like to them we just have to do what the Democrats say, right? Let's look back at the shutdown fight. You know, the Democrats said this is what we want. If y'all don't give us this, we're not going to open the government. Now, it's easy for us to frame that as cooperation, but I think from the Republicans' perspective, they might frame that as, well, we have to go along with the Democrats and agree with them, and then they will let us open the shutdown. Do you see where I'm coming at with this? Where sometimes I have a hard time seeing whether or not Republicans will see it as cooperation. Does that make sense? Because I feel like what we're doing is we're saying Democrats don't open the government, don't cooperate, and force them to come cooperate with you. And the Republicans might say, well, this isn't really cooperation for us. This is us capitulating to their demands. And so now we need to get back at them for that. So how do we overcome that framing?
Well, I think, well, exactly. You used the key word here, framing, right? So again, the strategy itself is not a strategy of rhetorical framing. It's a strategy of...
This guy has a British accent. That makes me trust him more.
The effect of your action. And the framing, if you look at the studies on populism, this is something we have to be really careful about, is populism survives and thrives on victimization of itself. They're the ultimate snowflakes. So you mustn't feed this victim narrative that they're trying to pursue. Now, of course, they're going to try and pursue it. It doesn't matter what you do. They are going to state that they have been victimized. There's no cooperation going on. But in terms of the effect, cooperation favors them, even though they may be a little bit grumpy outwardly and in terms of how they frame it, because that's the way they do, that's how they self-identify as the victims. In practice...
I think he's from Germany. Okay, I can't tell my accents.
They've got a little bit easier that time round when they've had cooperation reciprocated. And the politicians will learn that. And so however they frame it, we're not in control of that, right? That's how they want to frame it. Their media wants to frame it. You have to kind of, to some extent, ignore that because they're going to frame it whatever suits their agenda. That's not because of the actual action behind your political action, what you've done. So we should ignore that.
Let me follow that up because I like how you talked about framing there, and I want to see this. So do you think that, and I've heard some discussion around this, and I really like this idea, not just because my Christian bias, but do you think that there should be more grace in victory from the Republicans? So let's say we had that shutdown, and let's say the Republicans go, fuck, you know what, fine, we'll do the healthcare thing, we'll let you guys do it, and now we can reopen the government. Should the Democrats have come out and said, hey, everybody, we cooperated with the Republicans, and the Republicans worked with us to reopen the government?
He lives in Germany, but his accent's British? Oh. Yeah, his colonialist incentives are keeping him strong, okay?
This is a victory for both sides of the aisle, or should the Democrats have come out and rubbed the Republicans' nose in it and said, fuck them, we got it, we owned them, this is awesome, fuck Trump. In your mind, which framing should I be using in tit for tat?
Sorry.
Are we talking about the strategy from the Republicans' perspective or the Democrats' perspective?
The Democrats' perspective doing tit for tat. Democrats, they...
Okay, but we shouldn't expect at this point in time, it's like going back to this analogy of a badly behaved child, right? When you start disciplining the child in the right way, and that involves carrot and stick, yeah? Then the child's going to be really grumpy at first. You're not going to see much. I mean, forgive me, I'm not a parent, so if this is an analogy falls flat in his face, then so be it. But I do think there's an aspect of a child that...
So we do the leading a horse to the water thing today? Sure, but I'm going to do it in a very tired voice, so then I'm able to display my sense of exasperation. You cannot lead the retarded horse to the water. The retarded horse do not understand what the water is. The water had no brain cells, so it do not understand the retarded horse.
It's not experienced enough balance between stick and carrot. And when they start to experience that, they're going to be grumpy. They're going to be annoyed, right? And that's where the Republicans are now. But what you're going to create in the future, right? And this is the thing, is about the patience Democrats are going to have, is a Republican Party that I can foresee Connor being able to rejoin again. Because it will be that kind of party that says, you cooperated there.
It doesn't hit
And
the same.
historically, we've seen this with
I mean, what can I
Republicans.
say?
They'd be wonderfully acknowledging of cooperation, right?
So, but I want a direct answer on this one. The Democrats win the shutdown. They get what they want out of the shutdown. Chuck Schumer comes on TV that night and he's going to say one of two things. He's going to say, this was great. We got to work with the Republicans. They came to us and we cooperated and got this done. Or does Chuck Schumer say, haha, fuck you losers. Democrats won this one.
Hey, dude, Chuck Schumer. Dude, if Chuck Schumer would do that, bro, I would be like, Schumer, you're cooking, okay? Cooking more than you're cooking.
And we're going to keep fucking winning. What is the narrative?
Rhetorically, it shouldn't be too black and white. I think the problems for Democrats, right, were that it was all a bit disorganized how they ended the shutdown, and so the messaging wasn't very clear around it. But in an ideal world, they could vocalize the cooperation, and as you pointing out here, I think this is what you're insinuating. There shouldn't be a vindictive element at all rhetorically to what Democrats say. That aspect of the rhetoric does not help from the politicians. But let's not assume that what the politicians say are what necessarily political pundits should say. Because what they might say may lead to a debate like we're having right now, which wouldn't have happened if they weren't a little bit ambiguous and
and I'm not asking you. I'm not asking you to solve the whole thing. I'm just kind of trying to get an idea of holistic, kind of more like, okay, the Democrats do this strategy. How are we then moving forward and looking at it? That is the last question that I have for you, Reason. Connor, I want to make sure you have a chance to respond to anything he said. If there's a part where you feel like you didn't get to respond to something, now's the time. Feel free to bring it up. And then Reason will come back to you, and then we'll go into Connor, or we'll do an amicus brief, and then go into Connor's argument.
Yeah. So one of the things that we bumped into through that conversation that I want to address is also my anxiety about populism. I don't like populism. I think that the mob, we're in a representative democracy for a reason. If you look at the founding fathers, they believe that the elites of our society should be elected into office so they can craft technocratic policy that's good for everyone. Unfortunately, it feels like Republicans, and to some degree Democrats, have abdicated in that responsibility for the past 50 years, and they've let really, really bad systemic issues fester. And I think that's causing radicalism, and it's causing the popularity of populism. The reason why I'm anxious about populism when it comes to tit for tat is because people can look at Trump's effectiveness when it comes to rallying the populist base. They can look at him playing on the anxieties of economic and social anxiety, and they can say, damn, that's really effective. Let's go ahead and adopt that strategy. And I think my fear with that, particularly with the left, is not only does that naturally fall in with the left, because the left historically have been advocates for the people, but also I think there's some really, really nefarious characters who are waiting in the wings to basically seize power upon a left-wing populist wave. By that, I mean that we have a socialist mayor in New York. We have people like Hassan Piker, who unfortunately are some of the most popular voices on the left wing. There are authoritarian leftists who, while unpopular now, they could be popular in a decade. And so my anxiety is that what I effectively watch happen on the right is bad behavior consistently get rewarded and dismissed as not important because that bad behavior was fringe, it was nominal, it was a part of a fluke of politics or whatever excuses they came up with. It became the norm. And so I don't want to excuse bad behavior on the left because I'm afraid that the identical thing will happen where once again we'll have.
Bro, one fucking step at a time, you fucking moron. Dude, one step at a time. Hold your fucking retarded horse. Bro, I'm sorry, but the left is far better than the right, okay? I'm just gonna leave it at that. The left are the good guys, the right are the bad guys. You're speaking with the presumption as if the left equal parts has a good and a bad side, and the right also has equal parts of good and a bad side, when in reality it's not the same, right? You're assuming that you can still fix the Republican Party back to a state where they are considered the good guys again. But the key word is consider, right? Because they're not actually good, right? The Republican Party is rotted to the core. They must be dismantled. It is because of them of why we have Trump in the first place. It's because of their practices and their dog whistling why we have Trump in the first place. That is why everything has been happening right now the way that they have. And to pretend, and to pretend it's otherwise is delusional in a way, right? Because I think we have to acknowledge that I think that we can self-police way better. Okay, I'm sorry, but the Democratic Party can self-police way better than the Republican Party. Okay, like I just don't buy this. I don't buy this thing where Connor is worried for the self-policing thing for the Democratic wing, because I don't think it's not even close to the same. I'm sorry, it's not close to the same. It's just not. It's just not close to the same. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah.
Have a race to the bottom, mutually assured destruction. And I was just discussing this with my chat. If we break this system, what waits for us is anarchic reciprocal violence, similar to like failed states all across the globe. And I'm not interested in that.
Yeah, like I'm sorry that the right is a bunch of like fucking backstabbing ghouls, but that's what they are. They're backstabbing ghouls. Right? They're like backstabbing ghouls. I'm sorry, but we're not the same. Okay, we're just straight up not the same. It is. You have to accept that. Okay, sorry.
No, I think that's totally fair, and we're going to get into some of that whenever we come to your argument. I do want to touch on some of those things. I just want to make sure we finish out Mr. Riffs pretty well. Thank you, Mr. Points. Mr. Riffs, is there any points that you feel like you didn't get to make, or anything that you feel like wasn't addressed for your affirmative argument? You will get a chance to critique Connor's arguments whenever we get to his.
Well, I mean, can I respond to Connor's point there? Because I was going to object in some respects, but I also like the fact he was in flow and wanted to hear what he had to say.
That's fine. Let's go ahead and do one. Let's not take too much time, though, because you are going to get plenty of time to respond.
Well, it's just speculative about Mandani, and he also condemned Hassan. So I'm open to seeing whether he's a bad or good influence on American politics, but I don't think he's the mirror of Trump. I have hope, and I think he may actually be a force for good for the Democrats. But we'll wait and see. The proof will be in what he actually does.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's well said. I think that's good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and call it for the affirmative argument for Mr. Biffs, and I appreciate both parties on that. We're going to go over to the bailiff. Bailiff, did we have an amicus brief ready?
We do. We have just a few questions for amicus brief. Reminder, y'all, if you want to ask either of our parties any questions, go ahead and type it in any of my chats. Switch to kick. We do have a couple. I have two questions from I Have Eaten Foliage, friend of the stream. How is the justice system not tit for tat for violations of law, judicial and lawful means versus lawless and reckless means? This question is for Connor, I believe. And I believe it's getting at the justice system as tit for tat in the way it behaves, and why I assume it's about some proposed disagreements with using the judiciary against Republicans.
Yeah.
It's a mega nerd shit, yeah, but the entire point of this is it's like kind of like LARPing, right? I mean, I will say it's LARPing. Okay, I like. What do you want me to say? It's LARPing. Yes, it is.
Once again, I'm happy that we all have the right kind of autism today. So that's excellent. What I would say is that arguably it's the intelligent tit for tat, not the autistic tit for tat. So as an example, if you shoplift, let's say that you steal $20 worth of shit, the state doesn't come in and steal $20 worth of your shit. That would be the autistic tit for tat. Making the example even more extreme, for murder, although we do capital punishment, oftentimes for murder, the motivation behind capital punishment is actually not like, as an example, a serial killer who beats to death multiple women with a hammer. We don't beat the serial killer to death with a hammer. What we do is we euthanize them, because we're effectively saying, you are such a dangerous person, you can no longer be a part of our population, you're too dangerous to release, as a result we're putting you down. It's kind of like euthanizing a dog.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? That's kind of what capital punishment is.
Oh my god.
So I think that it is the same tit for tat, where legalistically and as morally as we can, we're reciprocating the social harm that you have done and imposing a consequence that hopefully gets your attention, but we're not literally doing exactly what you're doing back to you. That's how I would differentiate.
Okay. I would ask.
Can we not call it generous tit for tat? If we have to talk about it, can we just can we call it merciful tit for tat? Doesn't that sound just far better? Merciful. Merciful. As in, we don't need to extend you any of this mercy, but we're choosing to because we're nice people.
Ms. Rivers asked your response. However, I realize that capital punishment was brought up.
Of course, he's pro-death penalty. Yeah, because he's stupid.
So that'll be a little easy for this one to spiral out. So let's go ahead and move to the next question.
You've hit on a bunch of points that follow up into the next few questions. So we've also got a question from Ivory. They asked, which you kind of just addressed a bit. Last night you said to not cry about a stolen bike if the perp was arrested/tried. Kind of getting at what you just said. Does restitution factor into analysis? And I have Ian Foliage, who asked the previous question, responded in chat just now. Except the state does come and steal $20 of your shit to make you pay it back, and then more.
I've eaten
What do you say to that,
foliage.
Connor?
I would say, and then more. So as an example, $20 like might be cash restitution to the theft, but they don't literally come into your house, inventory your personal property, and then take $20 worth of personal property. I think we can understand the difference between restitutional payments and the state literally taking $20 worth. Like so for instance, you steal a candy bar.
But it is against
the
your will,
state
right?
wants it-
You're forced to. So
What's that?
it's not stealing, but it's stealing in the way that libertarians call taxes, right?
Taking your property. Okay.
Destiny wasn't against the death penalty. No, I'm pretty sure he's like anti-death penalty. Like I would be surprised if he's pro-death penalty, just mainly because he's such a big statistics guy. The death penalty just simply does not pay out in statistics. It's not supported well in terms of deterrence in any way whatsoever. Like there's just so like in every aspect, the death penalty fails. In every study. Yeah. Like it's a constant negative, yeah.
Okay.
I
So
actually, Connor, 1
it
second.
doesn't come in and take a reciprocal amount of food, right?
Yeah.
And we're not even talking about morally speaking. Like morally, I'm against the death penalty too. But like even scientifically, it's not. Yeah.
Connor-
They make you pay for the candy bar.
Connor, how do you like this? Real quick, just because I thought of this just now. You are fine with this intelligent tit for tat we just find here. You're not okay with eye for an eye. Eye for an eye is you're literally doing the same thing from one person to the other. Tit for tat, you can hear it in the name, is talking about different responses for this, back and forth maybe, but the responses are not entirely equal, right? I think that we can talk about that.
No, I think that's well said. I am not, weirdly enough, I am for eye for an eye in certain circumstances, but I'm not for eye for an eye in general. I think turning the other cheek is better. And I also think that this more intelligent version of tit for tat is better. And sorry, there was like another part of the question though that I wanted to address.
It was pretty good.
The bike. Can I address the bike thing?
Sure.
So when it comes to the bike thing, my statement is not about justice. Okay. When it comes to justice, the Trump administration should, which was the debate, should be held to account for its illicit actions. Pete Hegseth, if he violates the law in order to drone strike civilians in the Caribbean, should be held to legal account. Donald Trump, if he used the office for private gain and there's a statute that he has violated that can be proven in a court of law, he should be impeached. He should be incarcerated. However, we're dealing with a system that I think we all understand is kind of complex, but we're dealing in a system where realistically, unless the Senate flips, I very much doubt there's going to be a successful impeachment and incarceration or incrimination of Trump through 2028. I also think that when you could say it's a false tit for tat, but the Republicans are going to argue, well, the reason why Trump is comfortable pardoning himself and his cabinet and his cronies and this and that is because of the pardons of Hunter Biden and the January 6th committee. So they'll be arguing tit for tat in order to excuse their own bad behavior. Until the legislature modifies the power of the pardon, as far as I know, the power of the pardon is final. There's actually there's no way to get around it. So if you want to have a truth commission where we discuss the many sins of the Trump administration, that's fine. That's not what Destiny was arguing for, though, last night. What he was, and maybe I should leave that for specifics, but effectively,
I'll ask. What do you think Destiny was arguing for then? What was the alternative that you think Destiny was arguing that wasn't that? Because I put my own question in the amicus brief from ZipZip. Destiny's proposed charging Republicans and barring them from office included legal avenues like charging them under the 14th Amendment as insurrectionists, and also included things such as impeaching Supreme Court justices, packing the court, constitutional amendments, possibly if you need to tighten up language on things. Is that sort of legality? Would you oppose that sort of actions? Are you against that principally, or are you against that on you don't think it'll happen?
I think this is part of the negative race to the bottom, and I'll try to differentiate. So once again, if we could hold these people to legal account, we should. We can't. Now, when it comes to the shit, you were talking about packing the court. I actually don't think there's technically anything legalistically standing in the way of packing the court.
Correct.
However,
perfectly legal.
My fear is that, let's say that we have.
I think he said generally he was against it. He might make an exception in extreme cases, but it was a case by case for any exception. Oh, okay. All right. If he says that, I'm okay with that. But sure.
A 5-4 conservative majority in the court right now. Let's say that you just add 1 or 2 justices, or let's say you double the size of the court, but you make them all.
Say you had 40, hypothetically.
What's that?
Say you added 40, hypothetically. Go to the extreme.
40, sure. then what's to stop the next conservative government from adding another 40? And what's the
Well, then
the next liberal government from adding another 40? It's
Well, then you keep on adding, stupid. What the fuck? That's all of politics, right? Like, let's be very clear. That's just politics in general, right? Is trying to counter each other's actions like, consistently. We're not talking about a world where people just stop trying to gain power, right? Isn't all of power just trying to gain politics like that? That is politics in general. Yeah, then just keep on adding until it becomes extremely silly, all right? Actually, no, keep on adding even if it becomes silly. You should just keep on adding.
a race to the bottom. And then I want to address the legal punishment for insurrectionists.
Mhm.
If these people are guilty of insurrection, let's say that Josh Hawley, as an example, I'm pretty sure that he was in direct telephone communication with people who were involved in Stop the Steal and maybe even Proud Boys. He might have been texting them or calling them. If there is any indication that Josh Hawley, number one, doesn't get a pardon, and maybe even if he got a pardon, you could do the insurrection thing that Stephen was arguing about, then where you don't criminally convict him, but you charge him with insurrection, therefore he's barred from office.
Well, the part about insurrection, right, isn't just it's engaging in insurrection or aiding and abetting the perpetrators thereof, right? So it can include more than just Josh Hawley. It can include people who aided.
But with the aiding and abetting, I think that the aiding and abetting would be specifically like in reference to aiding them and abetting them in reference to insurrection. So, for instance, like if somebody participates in
Not if the Supreme Court says it doesn't.
And then, well, I just want to finish this example.
Sure.
Let's say that somebody participates in insurrection, but then they get old, and I help them with their groceries across the street. Well, I just aided them. Is that the intent of the law? Is to, basically punish anybody who helps the person who's guilty of insurrection ever? Obviously not. I almost guarantee you that the intent of the law is aiding and abetting them specifically with an insurrection. So just to wrap it up, because I know I'm verbose, if you want to go after Josh Hawley because he's specifically guilty of insurrection, that's totally fine. However, if Marco Rubio had nothing to do with January 6, 2021, but you want to charge him after the fact with insurrection, I think that's fucking insane.
Okay. All right. How many more questions do we got? Let's try to
think that was
these
all.
in. We
So,
got it.
can I respond to some of Connor's points there? Actually,
Come on in.
frankly, disagreed on. So I mean, I didn't hear Destiny's debate with on Wick last night, so I'm a bit of a weak spot with regards to that. But I did hear a little bit of what he said and what you also just described now. And I don't think that those applications of because we're talking now about how tit for tat's applied, right? And I think packing the Supreme Court might be the thing to do. I think the problem is that it's about gauging what too much is and what too little is, right? And the risk with too little is it is appeasement, by the way. And the Democrats have effectively, for too long, been appeasing Republicans, and they've turned them into this monster, partly been responsible for turning them into this monster. But of course, there's the other risk of doing too much, being overzealous. And that, of course, can accelerate and become a form of brinkmanship, right? But I think most of the time, it's avoiding risk rather than taking the right amount of risk that Democrats have done. And I think maybe the right amount of risk has come to the point of packing the Supreme Court. I also think there's imaginative ways legally you can do this as well, right? In terms of continuing to support an insurrection by denying it. So you can make the law stay alive in terms of then people start to deny it in the future, and they're starting to actively break the law. Now it's about how following the letter of the law is about the intent of the law, right? I can't foresee at this point in time Marco Rubio being considered guilty of that per se. We can see his role.
There's about 220 people here watching right now. Guys, could you please take the time, all right? There are several things you can do to support the channel, all right? In addition to donating, but everyone, is like pro whatever donation, but you already know about that. If you want to donate the most, it's kick.com, all right? If you want to donate, but get some benefits out of your donation, you can donate on YouTube, but I get a far less cut. Just know that. In addition, all right, I just want to say, please go to my Discord server, discord.gg/foodshops. All right, again, we're never gonna stop trying to grow the community for as much as possible because it's great. And yeah, it's terrific, well moderated. All right, chill and edgy at the same time. All right, lots of debates and open discourse on that server. All right, and people gaming together, very friendly community. And just don't say anything stupid, please. Use common sense. Anyway, you should go and subscribe to my second channel, okay? It's Snack Markets. If you, it's like right here, I guess. Wait, am I pointing correctly? Yeah, I'm pointing correctly. Okay. It's right here. If you go there, subscribe to the second channel so then I'm able to get it up eventually to 1,000 subscribers, all right? Once I get it up to 1,000 subscribers, I'm able to apply for ads on the second channel videos. So then, yeah. And let's see, what else am I talking about? Oh yeah, if you guys have a Kick account or make a Kick account, go to my Kick chat and type in a random message. Just type in any random message, just so that it can count towards me getting Kick partnership. Okay, so yeah, thank you so much. All right, these are my goals right now. Good luck. All right, thank you for your continued support. I think that's all the shilling I can do. All right. How would I know if I'm saying something stupid? I'll tell you.
Is one of, he's probably the only sane person in that government. I think most of us would agree on that. So it is about, the implementation is about following the intent of the law, right? It's not just how it can be interpreted in a cold way. It's about how it's intended to be implemented. There is an aspect of that, right?
I'll just
generally speaking, if you're an active chatter, you should try chatting on Kick instead, okay? Because if you chat on Kick, that'll count towards my overall, that will count towards your overall, like, fucking thing. My overall, like, count, right? If you're a chatter, you should go there. If you're not a chatter, and you're just a lurker, you should be on YouTube, okay? Generally speaking, okay? I mean, it depends on which chat you like better at the end of the day, but at least try to benefit me. Okay, thanks.
Just a quick point on there. You said Marco Rubio is possibly the sanest person in the administration. We can all agree.
Yeah.
As a Venezuelan American myself, I'm not sure if I completely agree, but yeah, I understand your point. But yes, he's the sanest. Maybe not sane.
Yeah, it's a difficult one to pick out. Okay, Zip, any more questions for this amicus brief?
That's all we had.
Okay, great. Then Mr. Points, you already gave us your opening statement. But I think we all have a good understanding of your position now. Going into this, I was hoping actually.
Thanks, guys. I see you guys chatting over there on Kick for a little bit. Okay, thanks. I appreciate that.
We kind of end up at the position that we kind of defined earlier, and I thought that's where you were going to go with it. However, I do want to kind of address some of the extreme actions of the Republicans and kind of the lack of action by Democrats. So whenever I see the Democrats showing restraint, I don't see a lot of acknowledgement of that restraint from the Republicans. I see a lot of irrational behavior of them claiming things happened that didn't happen or overstating things that happened such that they can justify their even greater illegal actions. So whenever I see that kind of thing, I don't look to Democrats and go, why aren't you acting unhinged like that shit? However, it does make it hard for me to accept any kind of behavior other than a punishment or a kind of a reckoning as some of that language we recently had, do you think there should be, I mean, I'm not asking for appeasement here, but I'm saying how much of a measured response do you think Democrats should have here? Because right now it seems like the Republicans are giving them kind of carte blanche to take whatever means necessary.
Yeah, so...
One second, Mr. Riffs. Go ahead, Mr. Points.
No, I mean, this is
Mr. Riffs. This was to Mr. Points.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I forgot my surname for a moment there. Sorry.
Yeah.
If you continue interrupting, the bailiff will mute you.
Yeah, Mr. Points is the one responding to my primary question. So go ahead, Mr. Points. You're fine.
So can you restate your question in like a single sentence? Like,
yeah, let me get it. Yeah, sure. That was a little rambly. So whenever I see do you think that whenever I see how unhinged the Republicans are getting and how little Democrat restraint?
No, you'll get a cool, colorful name in my Discord server, and everyone will be like, "Oh my god, that person has a cool, colorful name. They are so cool for having the cool, colorful name." And then everyone will look at that and they'll be like, "Oh my god, I am coming." All right, because you're so cool and you're not like the other virgins. Okay.
Has done to kind of show the correct actions. How am I supposed to understand? How should I look at the Democrats and ask them for restraint? How can I expect restraint from the Democrats whenever Republicans are acting as severely as they are? Does that make sense?
It does. I think the problem, though, is we could probably bring up half a dozen false equivalencies that I do not believe to be genuine, but propagandistically they work on the right wing. And what I mean by that is if you bring up January 6th, they bring up BLM, right? If you bring up if you bring up the hammer attack on the Pelosi's, they bring up Charlie Kirk. And there's a host of reasons why these scenarios are separate, but within the mind of the Republican or within the mind of MAGA, it is reciprocal. They're allegedly engaging in negative behavior that mirrors the negative behavior of the left. And actually, a healthy chunk of them would argue that, for instance, the sweeping of the media for the BLM riots, where they're like, "Oh, fiery but mostly peaceful" or whatever. I hear that shit all the time, right? And so unfortunately,
Wait, hold on. What does Connor believe about the BLM riots? Sorry, or the protests? Because it is the fact that most of them are peaceful, right? Like, let's be very clear about that. They are mostly peaceful, right? Does he believe otherwise, or like, I don't
It's
know.
not illegal to be stupid in the United States of America. It's not stupid. It's not illegal to be a conspiracist. It's not illegal to believe in conspiracies. And frankly, I don't think that barring like a
Calls it a summer of peace, so he's a dumb fuck, dude. Actually, just kill
complete
me, dude.
redevelopment of our constitution.
Never mind.
We're not going to be adopting European style,
So
let's say
stupid.
like anti-Nazism laws, where you're actually prohibited from advocating for Nazism as an ideology in some parts of Europe. We're not going to have that in the United States. You're allowed to be a dumbass. You're allowed to be a political zealot. You're allowed to be a religious zealot within the United States. So you're saying, well, why can't?
One moment. I understand your point, and I think you're making a good one. And I'm gonna follow up with you, and then I'm gonna go to Mr. Riffs on this. I agree. I think that I agree with you that there are a balance in the Republican mind there. But I think you've heard the phrase, war is not a bilateral decision, war is a unilateral decision, right? And what it sounds like you're describing to me is that the Republicans have already accepted the fact that they're at war. And so I'm asking you, what should I be valuing and what should I care about such that Democrats should not be doing the same thing? What am I protecting by showing this level of restraint that you're talking about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, that's if I'm not strawmanning my.
You know who Kafka is? I think I now know who Kafka is. Kafka is just the new book smarts. Kafka is just the new book smarts. Yeah. Right? Because he's the one trying to reason out like the way around an argument. He's the one that's trying to figure out the right questions to ask, right? To move the argument forward. Yeah.
Opposition, that's where.
What do you mean that's fucked up? I'm just saying.
The sane tit for tat, the legal, self-defensive, proportional, intelligent tit for tat is probably appropriate. I am not in favor of appeasement and turning the other cheek, which.
That's an insult? Why is that an insult? That's not an insult. Okay, all right. Okay, fine. He's like okay, Kafka is like the book smarts, but actually deserving of the book smarts name, okay? Or deserving of actually being book space smart.
A question that was asked earlier in this conversation was,
what do you want me to say?
What's an alternative to tit for tat? Well, the alternative is turning the other cheek, right? Where they do something bad and you say, listen, I'm above freaking out, right? But that can be interpreted oftentimes like within the.
He's like the better Pisco. I don't know about that. I think Kafka is more passive than Pisco. I think Kafka is way more chill than Pisco. Pisco is very fiery, okay? Pisco is a very fiery individual. But Kafka is like more, he's more peaceful.
Christian moral framework.
Yeah.
What that's supposed to do is that's supposed to shock your opponent where
homeless
your opponent is
and
shocked
Mexican,
by
what?
your restraint in reference to their offense against you, and they start questioning their own moral system. However, I've seen no willingness from the Republicans to do something shocking like January 6, 2021, to have the country proverbially turn the other cheek in reference to not indicting Donald Trump for his attempted insurrection, and then them to go, wow, that was really scary. We almost fucked up the Republic of the United States, and the Democrats gave us a pass. Let's wake up.
He was homeless in Mexico?
Better. That didn't happen. And so for me, the intelligent tit for tat actually makes sense. But again, legal, defensive, sane, proportional, which once again, I know Reason is advocating for. I would argue other people are not.
Well, but I think we've come into a little bit of an area where we might find disagreement. Mr. Riffs, I think that you would say that there have been times where that turning of the other cheek has happened, where you would say, look, the Democrats turned their cheek here.
Lived in a van. Oh, what the fuck? Did Booksmarts actually live in a van? Difficulties did you play Expedition 33 on your first time? Oh, the hardest difficulty. But even the hardest difficulty... okay, the hardest difficulty was hard, sure. But it wasn't too hard to the point where it was unmanageable. Like, for me, I was like, oh, okay, cool.
Firstly, let me be clear. We're now talking about the implementation of tit for tat. And by that very nature, we seem to have come to an agreement that tit for tat can be a viable strategy. And not even just a viable strategy. Connor's argument there was against appeasement, and that maybe it's time to stop, and how appeasement has failed. I mean, I couldn't argue for tit for tat better than Connor's just done. So in terms of the debate about tit for tat now, it's more about the implementation than it is about the strategy itself.
This guy's literally mentally ill. Yes.
Effectively, like...
Also, you know what Pisco is? Pisco is funny, okay? He's kind of like I mean, this might sound a little bit sucky to say. Pisco is kind of like a lolcow, okay? whenever somebody has a massive ego, and they begin to become a little bit predictable, I think they give off kind of low-cow energy to me. It's not because Pisco is constantly placing himself in really awkward situations, but it's more like his ego gets the better of him all the time. And it's not just sometimes, it's like all the time, right? Whenever somebody says, I'm just gonna say says on purpose, okay? Fuck you guys. Whenever somebody insults Pisco, he can't take it. He can't take it. His ego is too massive for that shit, okay? He just can't take it, you know?
I have no problem going through the line of questioning. I have no problem answering the questions, et cetera, et cetera. But I do think what we're talking about now effectively is that I had the autistic definition, which realistically I think somebody identified. It's eye for an eye. It's actually arguably not tit for tat.
And then he'll spend like the next 2 hours defending his ego, right? He'll spend the next 2 hours like massaging his ego, which is like some of the most silly, like, it's very clear that he also debates for the sake of his own ego, right? Like, it's very clear that he debates because it makes him feel superior to other men. I don't know, like, he's just so awkward and weird. It's just in that way, you know? Yeah. Like, he's just rife with insecurity, right?
But unfortunately, I think that outside of this room of sane gentlemen, tit for tat is synonymous with eye for an eye, and people are really bad advocates for the tit for tat, the sane tit for tat line of political prosecution that Reason Riffs has been arguing for.
I'm going to object on that on speculation. So that is speculative. The fact that people aren't necessarily fully understanding what tit for tat can mean in practice is a reflection of their own ignorance, not the strategy itself. And I actually don't think the people that are worthless. I mean, we're trying to communicate with other Democrats.
Oh my god, dude, this guy's smart. This guy's a good debater. Sorry, I did not understand your game, okay? I did not understand your game. This guy's cooking, Connor.
Other people in the center left. We're not trying to communicate with the wildest ones out there. And I get the impression, actually, Democrats are using tit for tat right now, but going any further than that.
I'm going to let the line of questioning proceed. I would say Stephen is unfortunately somebody who I would not see as a good advocate of what you're arguing for.
Well, okay, we can explore that in 1 second, but I will say, I think
I'm sorry, Reason. I did not understand your game.
that, Mr. Riss, I understand your position in that, like, it seems like we're getting to a point where we have an answer to our original question for this debate. And as is common, whenever we come into this room of gentle people, we're able to actually get to it very quickly. It's happened before, and it's probably going to happen in the future. That's kind of the point of this kind of structure, is to allow us to have that kind of understanding. However, the other side of it is to then say, okay, great, we got to the answer to the first question. Let's dig a little deeper. And that's what I'm trying to do here with you. I think Connor did bring up a good question before, a good position before, that I think that you will disagree with, is that he thinks that the Democrats have not provided a turn the other cheek, a wake-up moment for the Republicans. And I'm asking you, do you think...
I love that Fuya just used NBA Twitter. Is that where it came from? Is that actually where it came from? Because I don't know. I just say that,
one of those existed in the past. And if not, that's fine. But I'm just asking, do you think there was a wake-up moment that the Democrats gave the Republicans?
Look, I'm not going to be too hard on the Democrats, because hindsight it's much easier to see this kind of behavior, right? But I think, forgive my ignorance as to the history of the recent history of US political history. I think it was after McCain stood for president. Basically, the Republican Party's been hijacked somewhere after that. McCain was a wonderful individual and potentially a good president, the last president that the Republicans could have put forward, or have put forward. And I think ever since then, you've had this behavior on the part of the Republicans of trying to put a spanner in the works of everything.
He's so focused on being right, he can't entertain the fact that he is wrong sometimes. Yeah, he'll never admit that he's wrong. And that's like the mark of many people with humongous ego, okay? But yeah.
Good that the Democrats try and do it, even if it's in line with their policy positions. And so you've had this non-cooperation after another. And there are examples of government shutdowns that the Republicans have pushed forward in the past, and the Democrats didn't take that as an act of non-cooperation, and then start to take a small risk in the short term by looking for ways and avenues to change the system to make it even harder for Republicans to do that again in the future, and say and communicate. We're going to do that if you keep doing this. And Republicans in the past have done that multiple times. So I think historically they have Democrats. I think Democrats have appeased on far too many occasions in the past. But in hindsight, including under Biden, by the way.
I think no, and that's fair. And I think that you actually brought something up earlier that I should have jumped on. We're going to bring it in here. You talked about a self-victimization complex. And I think that fits what we're talking about right now, Connor. Whenever you're talking about this turning the other cheek, where I think, and as you said, they're using whatever they can to make things reciprocal. So I struggle to think of a way in which we could have the Democrats turn the other cheek and the Republicans would not self-victimize in a way and create something so that actually, no, they didn't turn the other cheek. This was reciprocal, or we should be doing it, do you think we're in that kind of environment right now? And if so, do you think then that's why turning the other cheek might not be the strategy we should be using right now?
Yeah, so I think that it might have been a mistake. Just to clarify my argument in reference to January 6, 2021, turning the other cheek probably was a mistake. So I can understand the sanity of the moment and the adults in the room's hesitation to do tit for tat. So as tit for tat, just to be clear, John Eastman, a lawyer, wrote a political scheme in which the vice president's role over counting electoral votes was not ceremonial. Mike Pence could arbitrarily throw out the vote, and he could kick it back to the states, who would have to recertify their elections, a power that he doesn't really have. And then they even argued that even if he doesn't have the power, he should just do it, and we should fight it out in court. And here's 3 ways that we can win. Number one was declaring Donald Trump the unilateral victor. The other one was to kick it to the House of Representatives, which I think the Republicans had a majority at the time, so Trump would win that way. And then the final way, I think, was to get it in front of a court somehow. And at that point, I think they were just trying to play out the time so there would be enough confusion around the situation that eventually the courts might just hand Trump the presidency. And that was the Eastman memo. So in reference to that, as far as I can understand, that is effectively an attempt to overthrow the Republic of the United States through lying. That's what it was. It was lying, and they whipped up a protest and a mob in order to do that. Well, all those people, in my opinion, not only did they commit crimes, they're deserving of punishment for those crimes, but because it was such a crazy moment and because Donald Trump was so powerful within the Republican caucus, they were not able to get enough people to impeach and indict Trump.
I think that's what's going to happen, right? J.D. Vance, who is going to be responsible for the vote counting and stuff like that, he's going to be doing all the shameless shit to keep whatever MAGA person in power. He's gonna do it
for his co-conspirators.
There's no way JD Vance is gonna be there's no way JD Vance is gonna be oh well, I mean, I gotta follow the law now.
Just didn't. And so they let it slide. But as a result of letting it slide, that emboldened the Trump campaign. And I forget who the speaker was at the time, but the whoever the head of the
Wait, by letting it slide, he means Trump pardoning to J6ers, right? That's what he means?
The Republican Party in the House of Representatives was at the time, he was at Mar-a-Lago within 2 weeks after they were considering indicting Trump, and he was embracing Trump. And that effectively normalized it within the Republican caucus. Oh shit, even though Trump just got kicked out of power and tried to overthrow the Republic, he's still a power broker within the Republican Party. We still have to make peace with the MAGA movement. So sorry for being long-winded, but the reason why I'm trying to describe this in accurate detail is because, in my opinion, Congress, Democrats, Republicans of good faith turned the other cheek, hoping that the American people would wake up, and they failed to do so. So once you turn the other cheek and your enemy strikes you again, at that point, it's probably time for legal defensive reciprocity.
It will follow the law if the political ways are going there, aka MAGA is failing movement, or Trump loses massive popularity if it doesn't have enough ideological belief to do anything unpopular. Okay.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that response. I think I see where you're coming from on this. Now let's go ahead and focus on Destiny's statements, because those will come up quite a bit. We're going to focus on that a little bit. And I want to ask Ms. Points, do you think that Destiny's statements about tit for tat, do you think he's coming from a place of cooperation, or do you think Destiny's advocacy is more about the reciprocity, about causing harm and getting back at the Republicans? Do you see it as Destiny wanting to return to a state of cooperation, or him just trying to find a way to hurt Republicans?
Honestly, my answer to this, I'll keep it short. He wants revenge. He wants revenge.
Okay. Mr. Riss, do you have an opinion about that? Do you think Destiny, while he's advocating something akin to your position?
If you're going to invite speculation, then I might as well answer to that. So I think we wouldn't be debating this right now if Destiny hadn't said what he said.
Well, sure. I'm not sure. No, but I'm saying, do you think that Destiny truly wants cooperation, and he wants this as a base of cooperation, or is Destiny finding a strategy that lets him hurt?
All right. I don't think that there's necessarily an intent behind some of these actions. I think they're very effective in getting us and probably the Democratic Party, at least some Democratic politicians, to talk about this stuff. And then I've seen it again and again. It's a strategy he seems to have, whether it's intentional or not. He says something wild and ambiguous. He gets 20% more people watching his stream, and then he makes sure it's ambiguous enough that he hasn't actually said anything terrible, and then he pulls it back a little bit, and then goes to the sensible point. And that seems to involve a level of control that if someone was really vengeful, I think he would have said something that was not ambiguous, that was just atrocious. But he hasn't actually done. He's incredibly clever. I that's his intent.
I can respect that.
Bro. Okay, Mr. Glazer.
But what I will say though is I'm bringing this back to what Connor Points was talking about earlier around populism, where I think I probably agree with you that I think that Destiny is being a little cheeky with his language and maybe a little provocative because he likes to go on Piers Morgan. But I think there's a good amount of populist sentiment out there, and I'm worried about it. And people see the strategy and they don't hear the cooperative part. They hear, we have a moral justification to reciprocate.
Yeah, but that's one point that Destiny's made himself very coherently. And whether that's true, I'll leave that to the academics to study it. But he's not a Democrat politician. It's what the Democrat politicians say in that regard. If I saw Newsom speaking the way Destiny's spoken, I would have a problem with that. But as a political pundit whose role is a little different here, I mean, he's had some positive influences. He's got us talking about this today. He's maybe even, I don't know what was happening behind closed doors in the Democratic Party, but I hope they're listening to the fact they need to take a little bit more risk in the short term to lower the risk in the longer term. And if it's helped that discussion, then he's had a positive.
Yes, yeah, this was my entire point. Yep. Like, this is literally my entire point. My entire point is you need to take a little bit of risk in the short term. And no, Hutch, it's not being blackpilled, okay? This is not being blackpilled like lefties. Okay, the fact that you're even describing it as such shows how bad faith you are on this. Okay, it's just simply trying a different strategy because the strategy that we've been using for the past who knows when or who knows how long is just clearly not working, right? That's all it is. That's all. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. You're making it more complicated, right? You're making it more complicated, but it's not complicated. All right. We're just trying out a different strategy because we have to make risks. We have to make gambles. We have to gamble. All right. We got to do a little bit of gamba. All right. That's all I'm saying. That's all I've been advocating for. That's all Steven's been advocating for. And that's all, Reason has been advocating for, I guess. Yeah, I don't know. This is like, if you really want me to put it in the most like optically sound way, that is the most optically sound way I can possibly put it, okay? In order to make it seem not as unhinged.
Influence. But what he's actually said in the short term will be forgotten.
Can I add? I gave Steven multiple outs last night. Okay, so what I said probably about half.
Okay, but what are these outs?
Way through, because his position was so extreme, and I'll remind people of the position. Steven's position was that even people who did not participate in January 6, 2021, if they are a Republican who supported the Trump administration or the MAGA agenda in any way, they should be charged with insurrection. And even if they're not criminally convicted, they should be deemed insurrectionists legally, so they could be barred from participating in politics. And what I said,
do a declaratory judgment, like a civil declaratory judgment, saying that these people participated in insurrection.
Right. And or if they participated with the second Trump administration, they were aiding and abetting an insurrectionist, and therefore they were deserving of being barred from political power. And so what he's really talking about is he's talking about a quarter of the representatives of the United States, and I would say half of the Republican Party easily, maybe 2/3 of the Republican Party, being barred from holding future office.
Oh, dude, I don't get to replicate. Hold on, I don't get to replicate one of the cooler cards. Oh man, dude, I want to replicate Sorrowful Godfather. I don't know why, like, I can't. Oh my god. I guess my luck is not on my side all that much. Wait, Quick Shelling. Actually, I'll pick Quick Shelling. Quick Shelling is good, okay?
As insurrectionists.
There's nothing wrong with a 0-cost card that is draw 1, okay? And you cycle through your deck. It's pretty good.
And what I said to him, probably, I don't know, a quarter of the way through the debate, I was like, number one, you've staked out an absurd position, hoping that everybody will crawl towards you, looking for rationalism, because that's what Prime Kai and Staxiums were trying to do. They were trying to find the steel man in the hyperbolic statement. They were trying to find the negotiation in the hyperbolic statement. And then I said, and then of course the famous quote about Donald Trump is,
monster costs 80 faint memory points. Duplicating them is nigh impossible. Oh, is that what the memory points are for? Is that what it means? Is that shit what it means? Oh shit! Don't even try. The save data gets jumbled. Yeah. Because. Yeah, it's so it's so interesting the way they try to limit you, but at the same time, like, they give you hope, you know? Like, you get a lot of hope. You get a lot of hope by playing this game, and you're like, I'm gonna create the best fucking build ever. I'm gonna beat this difficulty finally. And then the game be like, oh, here's an elite monster with poison. Oh, hell no. Okay.
Don't
yeah.
take him literally, take him seriously. Meaning
Fuck that
that
shit.
whatever position he has, the words around the position are not what matters. What matters is that he's staking out an emotional position in this approximate quadrant of policy. And so you need to move towards him, or else he's going to try to fuck you up. And so that's what I kind of said about Steven. He was like, no. Take me seriously and take me literally. And then at that point, I was like, okay, you're being the fucking lunatic. That's what happened last night.
Okay, I mean, I wasn't there, to be fair, and so it's a little bit difficult to really
Also,
reply to that. But
let's put on the record real quick. Let's put on the record. Wick was there being really slow as well. But go ahead.
Okay, I mean, one thing I would say is I think.
Do you know what I want to see? I want to see I want to see a Wick versus Kafka drama, okay? I want to see a matchup between these two. I want to see them fight with each other. But I feel like Kafka is way too non-confrontational. He likes to confront people, but he doesn't like to fight people, you know? He's not a stranger to discourse, but he is a stranger to shouting and doing blood sports. Like, they're not the same.
I think again, it takes a bit of imagination. I think both Connor and I have demonstrated an imagination about how this kind of level of, should we say, non-cooperation as a reciprocal action to the Republicans could be employed. And I think if there's a continued denial of January 6th, that's effectively like a continuation of the insurrection, of pushing for the illegitimacy of the US system in which you hold dear.
He's correct. Holy shit. Wait, I haven't even thought of that talking point. That's a good talking point. You are continuing the insurrection. The insurrection never ended, right? Because if you're like pardoning, right? If you're pardoning these people, it's like, it's almost as bad as January 6th. It's almost as bad. It's not exactly bad as January 6th. It's almost as bad as January 6th, is the way that I kind of see it. Is like, it's like the long insurrection, right? It's not the insurrection on January 6th. It's the long insurrection, like long COVID.
Yeah. And therefore, if any politician is suggesting that,
Jesus,
I think there is
how long were they?
kind of new law developed in
they
the
really
United
going
States
at it?
that is easily applied.
Should we finish this tonight? Should we stream late again? But then I have to edit tonight. Like, there are actually things to edit tonight, no?
So, of course, in the end, it's about,
shit,
you've got to be able to prove it beyond reasonable doubt in a court of law. So, I mean, maybe it's 25% of Republican politicians theoretically could be held account, but then you need the evidence there. So it's going to be a far smaller percentage that effectively you could prosecute with such a law. But I think there's definitely space for that, because if you continue to say that the elections were null and void, you're saying that the current system is null and void because of all the presidents you've had since then. So I think there's space for some creativity there in terms of pushing and taking a little risk in just how threatening it is in terms of action, what the Democrats could put forward. But how the rhetorics behind that shouldn't be too aggressive or victorioric. It should be really pushing towards the actual action of deterrence through making it completely illegal to denounce an election with no evidence whatsoever. It's insane. You're then bringing it into disrepute. It's crazy.
So my frustration with this, though, and this is where some of my conservative and Republican bona fides I think are going to come out, is that the procedure matters. And so when you say, and maybe I misunderstood you just here, but I think Stephen effectively said it. The reason why that you would consider anybody who participated in the second Trump government as somebody who aided and abetted an insurrectionist is that we largely know the facts surrounding the January 6, 2021, that they did not substantiate their fraud claims. They did not find outcome determinative fraud. They made these statements. They've been sued. I mean, Dominion sued Fox News for $750 million, and I think they won. And then not just that, the people in New York sued Rudy Giuliani, and I think they won a $150 million lawsuit for defamation for the people who counted votes in Georgia. And it seems like the Republicans have omitted intentionally facts that are inconvenient to the stolen election narrative, and they propagandize their base to believe that that the 2020 election was stolen. And so what's happened, though, is that procedure has to be followed through. And what I mean by that is those people, you can't just say that in public, declare them insurrectionists, and say that the past 4 years were null and void. Because effectively, if you don't go through the process of proving this in a court of law and convicting these people, then you don't have the authority of the state behind these statements. And all of your statements of invalidation, the Republicans are going to mirror. Now, you could argue the Republicans are already mirroring it by, for instance, the auto pen with Biden. That's them undermining the previous administration. I think they undermined it with Obama as well, where they said like he didn't have the authority to negotiate the Iran nuclear deal or some shit. I forget.
Well, they question.
This is the problem with the current administration. Now, there are many problems, but I think this might be the most major one. Is that normally in a democracy, you are going after your opponent. However, in this instance, they are going after the very concept of a democracy. They're targeting the idea that the United States is a representative republic and a democracy. They're targeting that. That's what they're actually attacking. Attacking Biden, attacking Obama, attacking BLM riots. These are all just cherry on the top, all right? Cherry on the very top. Because most of their attacks is about attacking democracy, is trying to make it as useless as it possibly could to participate in a democracy, right? And I think that is the scariest part. That's the scariest part, I'll say. Yeah.
His birth. So I mean, already legitimacy question there, right?
They're already there, but that's where I wouldn't see that as Democrats making a sober tit for tat reciprocal legal move.
No, what I'm sorry, I'm being misunderstood. What I'm stating is that you could put a law in place that if you continue to deny that that the election of Biden was legitimate, if you continue to question Obama's birth without any evidence, this factual base of putting forward a view, and I mean in the public sphere, really in a public way, not between your friends around a beer, having a beer, but I mean really actually. And it's also, this goes on to another point we haven't discussed, by the way, is the right-wing media, whether whether they should be taken responsible for the mess that's in the US right now.
Let's one second. Mr. Riff, I'm going to give you a second to respond, but real quick, I think we were mostly all moving away from kind of the original point. I think we got through our stuff. How about this? We've still got some time on the clock. Do you guys want to do? Can we do? I'm gonna let you finish, Mr. Riffs. If y'all want to do some quick closing statements, if you feel like you need them, we can do our last amicus brief, and then I can close this out. And if y'all want to keep talking, I'm gonna let y'all do it. I have to get back to work, but I'll let y'all keep doing that after this. But Mr. Riffs, go ahead and finish out what you got, and then we can let's go ahead and finish out. Maybe you do a closing argument, and then Mr. Points, you can do your closing argument, and we'll get the amicus brief.
Well, I appreciate the good faith debate that we've had this evening, midday, whatever time zone you're in. And I feel quite convinced that actually we were both on the same page in terms of the tit-for-tat strategy. The implementation is always going to be the harder point. And it's also been quite clear that Democrats haven't utilized such an effective strategy in the past. And frankly, too much appeasement, I think, regarding January 6th has taken place. And it's led to the bigger risk that's facing the US right now. I would say in regards to Destiny's statements, I don't agree 100% necessarily with his wording and everything he says, but it's also about intent, and being provocative sometimes is quite effective. And I'm appreciative that his provocativeness has led to this discussion today, which I think we can both agree may not have happened if he hadn't have been so, right? Yeah. So, yeah, in terms of discussing and speculating his intent, that's another thing. And yeah, okay, maybe he goes a little bit too far sometimes, but it's perhaps better to go too far sometimes and not go far enough on other times. And I think he's overall a good force for political discussion, pragmatism, right, which is really quite a rare thing in politics today, to listen to views across the political spectrum, of the reasonable part of the spectrum. And so I really do appreciate him and his influence for that. Even if we disagree with him, maybe it's even 10% or less of the time. So yeah, I thank the court for hearing this case today, and hope my point about tit for tat being a reasonable strategy has been vindicated.
Thank you. Then Mr. Points, let's go ahead and hear your closing statement.
Yeah, if I was a memeing asshole, I'd be like, my opponent sucks. He sucks ass. His arguments are dog shit.
Do it.
Fuck that. I'd be a dick.
It's on the record.
I think what we've successfully done through, and I do like this, by the way. I really like the way that it was formulated, and it wasn't as blood sports is awesome. Blood sports is fun, but it's not always productive. And what I would say is, I don't know if we would have arrived at. There's a differentiation between tit for tat and eye for an eye. I don't know if we would have arrived at that if we had taken.
Oh no, you're gonna boost Kafka's ego too much, dude. Kafka is gonna be like, dude, yes, okay, I am the most productive debater, okay? it's better if people debate me than they are debating each other. I am the most productive debater. Oh
A
no.
blood sports approach. So what? Just to reiterate my case, though.
Oh god.
I think that Stephen has been ambiguous in the way that he's communicated tit for tat.
Over.
I also think that through some of his hyperbolic language and also through some of his proposed solutions, they're not as well considered as the solutions that we've considered here. As a result, it seems like they're motivated by vengeance rather than political pragmatism or actual effectiveness. And that hyperbole obviously.
But tit for tat is vengeance, right? It's not okay. Well, sorry, it's not vengeance because vengeance implies that there is emotional investment into the action, right? But pragmatism implies that it is devoid of emotional investment, or devoid of, or sorry, the investment is only into the most productive outcome, right? Yeah.
Part the conversation, which again, Stephen is very good at. However, I think that the caveats that my opponent has drawn out are the necessary caveats that I would need in order to sign on to a tit for tat strategy. As an example, using legal, defensive, moral means in order to impose consequences on your political opponent, unless society has totally collapsed. That's an important caveat that I don't often hear articulated.
But that's what we're saying, right? That's been the entire point the entire time. Legally prosecuting and Nuremberg trialing the conservatives, right? Although, to be honest, I'll go even farther than that. And I would not feel bad putting people in prison.
There was another thing too that was like super important for tit for tat.
The people, even the people who are like, oh yeah, I was just following orders. Well, you're no longer just following orders, right? At some point, you should have realized when you needed to stop, and you didn't stop. You should have done you should have done another job in society. There are plenty of other jobs because when you're in Nazi Germany, you don't have a choice, right? You either obey being a Nazi or you're dead. So no one's going to blame you for being forced to follow orders, right? When you're like a grunt. However, in this country, it's different, right? You're either getting swept up by your feet and you don't realize it. You don't realize that you're corrupted until it's too late, or you realize that you're doing something bad and you switch jobs and professions to something else because you're not forced to do that, right? You're not forced to do that. So yeah, they swore on an oath to the Constitution and broke it. Okay, yes. I actually agree with you. Everybody who swore an oath to the Constitution and broke it by serving this administration should be put in prison. Okay? Straight up. They should be put in prison. They should be tried in a trial. Okay? The Nuremberg trial thing that Stephen was proposing, right? Fine. I agree with that. I think that's a valid thing to advocate for.
The reciprocity. The minimum reciprocity.
Because the Constitution has to mean something, right? We can't allow the Constitution. We can't allow the Constitution to mean nothing, right? Because otherwise, if we don't enforce the Constitution, then there is no Constitution of the United States. There is no Constitution. Reckoning? Yeah, a reckoning. Yes.
Between 5 or 10%, where you are
like we can't worship the Constitution, and then we just let the people who break the Constitution blatantly walk on by. That's ridiculous, right?
Or I forget the word that you use, but effectively you're not reciprocal a majority of the time in order to try to mirror your opponent.
Can I just I just need to clarify some terminology because you said it a few times now, and it's just a lingo thing. But you mean to cooperate? Reciprocate means you just copy what the other person does.
Right.
It's literally what tit for tat. But you mean that 5-10% of the time you just cooperate even if the other person's not cooperated. That's
right.
What you mean.
So, yeah, sorry. Reciprocate can mean negative and positive. Right.
Yeah.
So so you cooperate 5 to 10% of the time. That way, there's an opening for you guys to build a collaborative relationship that hopefully restores some level of social trust and re-energizes the society. Those are important caveats that I had not heard articulated prior to this conversation. And so as a result, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth should be used very rarely. Tit for tat with these important caveats should probably come after turning the other cheek a couple of times.
Oh yeah, I got asked the question by North before multiple times, and I say it now specifically just to trigger North. Okay, if you guys forgot, North is basically the conservative who is a never Trumper, just like Counterpoints. Okay, he's like Counterpoints' son. Okay, North is like Counterpoint's son. All right, I think that's the best way to describe North. Okay, because they have the same fucking beliefs and they are both never Trumpers, and he is young enough to be his son, so therefore he is now Counterpoint's son. Okay. With that being said, one thing that I always say to Trigger North is by saying, yeah, I think it's justified to break the Constitution on purpose to go after the Trumpers. All right, to go after the people who swore an oath to the Constitution and the Trumpers. Because I think that if they don't follow the Constitution, then neither should you, right? Because again, if there is at least one side breaking the Constitution, then there's no point in following the Constitution, right? Like, what is the point in following the Constitution if there's at least one side not respecting the Constitution? The Democrats can't be the only party that's respecting the Constitution. That's untenable for the future. You're saying that the Republicans can just simply weaponize the Constitution against us whenever they please, but then we can't do anything about it when they break the Constitution? That's ridiculous. What an unreasonable expectation for the future. What an absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, I see your point, but at the same time, in court, we say that ignorance of the law is an excuse. If we don't have the Nuremberg trials, for the Constitution, then yeah, I support breaking the Constitution. Yeah, then we might as well have no more Constitution. Because there has to be a reckoning for breaking the Constitution, right? Yeah. I don't disagree at all. No, I understand what people mean when they say be careful, right? But I'm not saying we shouldn't be careful. I'm just saying, in general, this should be the sentiment.
But
right?
then you can't turn the other cheek in perpetuity, because if you turn the other cheek in perpetuity, it's just appeasement and you're rewarding your enemies.
Anyway.
And that's kind of how I feel about the overview of the discussion that we've had today.
There's another clarification with regards to tit for tat that I didn't make at the beginning, but the first move you always make is to cooperate with regards to tit for tat. So there's also an ambiguity there as to what the first move is. So if you want to look in terms of the election of Trump, part 2, the first move could have been
I feel like it might be a better precedent to behave better. I think that you should follow the Constitution after you have the Nuremberg trials that restores power to the Constitution. I think that you need to restore power to this piece of paper because that piece of paper has been disrespected like crazy at this point. That piece of paper has been disrespected to the point where we might as well not have the Constitution at this point. Okay? What is the point of swearing upon the Constitution if the Constitution holds no power over you? If you don't actually abide by it, right? There's no point. Oh shit, Gokunaru. Yo, Gokunaru, thanks for the raid, but like, I'm about to end soon. Actually, we'll see, okay? Because I don't know how much longer I want to watch, because I like this discussion. I like this discussion, okay? It's a fun discussion. So I'm gonna, maybe I'll probably just continue watching it. But, I don't know. I just don't know how much longer I'll stream, okay? But, we'll see. Yeah.
at the beginning of the year when there was also a
Okay, but now that I've been raided by Gokunaru, I think I might have to stream a little bit longer.
possibility for a lockdown, and they said shutdown. Sorry, and they said no, we won't shut down. Right, and Shimmer was kind of damned for doing that. But maybe that could be seen as okay, we're going to cooperate on the first move, and so they're using these opportunities for shutdowns as the turns of the game, shall we say? So that's also in accordance with tit for tat. Is to cooperate at first to make sure that it's clear that you're willing to cooperate, and then you begin the reciprocal behavior thereafter.
Forcefully obtain 2 curse cards. Copy 1 selected card. Includes forbidden cards. By forbidden, does it mean like...
Okay, well here. Bailiff, let's go ahead and get that last amicus brief in. Let's get some questions, and then I'll give a ruling. And then if we want to keep talking, we can.
That's the best way to copy cards?
Okay. You want to do questions?
Oh my god. Uh-oh. 2 Sorrowful Godfathers? I need epiphany for Sorrowful Godfather, okay? I need...
Yes, sir.
Yo.
All right, we got quite a few questions from our chats.
This
our
card
amicus
is
brief.
OP.
First question, lighthearted one.
Bruh.
This will be asked to everybody, but the question was directed towards Connor. Connor, Mr. Points, do you like your toast light,
If you
medium, or
copy
burnt?
Weirdly enough, I like all of them.
Gosh.
If I'm choosing, I'm probably going light. But every now and then, man, just like some burnt shit where you can like taste the charcoal. That hits too.
Okay. Understood. Mr. Riffs?
I don't want it to be charcoal, but it is nice when there's a little bit of an edge to it, especially with a bacon sandwich or something like this. So
Okay.
medium done. Yeah.
Your Honor, your answer?
I'm a light toast man. I can eat all the toast. I'm fine with it. But yeah, if I'm making it, it's gonna be a light toast. I like it to still have a little soft kind of bite to it, just with a crisp on the outside.
For myself as well, I do like medium to light. I need it to be a little squishy. Okay.
So just to clarify, we're all moderates in regards to toast as well. Then.
Correct. Yeah, no extremes here.
No extreme. Next question is from I have eaten. Oh, sorry. The last question was from Tropic. Next question is from I have eaten foliage. This question is for Reason Riffs. Can you expand on tit for tat and its value, even if the opponent doesn't learn their lesson? Performance versus appeasement under those conditions.
Yeah, I mean, this is actually an interesting point because on the theoretical side, when they look at
even Tiny has better food takes.
Players who with randomly generated strategies, right? Whereas in practice, you have to kind of gauge the strategy of your opponent. So in the end, if your opponent's always going to,
I fucking hate poison. This might be the run ender, dude. I fucking hate it whenever poison.
Not
fuck this.
I mean, you can see what's happening now in the American context, but historically in other cases, I mean, okay, you can go back to Hitler. It doesn't really matter if the other side it just completely appeases. It's going to become terrible in the end. So it's also about the nature of your opponent. But in the end, by having tit for tat, it's so damaging to them. It's just no longer interesting to not.
Man, I love using a machine gun. That is the equivalent of using a machine gun in this game.
So they have to be an incredibly irrational player to persist with that. So tit for tat really makes it worthwhile for them to cooperate, even if however selfish they are. And so you're making selfishness a good thing in that regard. And it's a very effective.
All right. Thank you. Next question is from I Am Ivory. This question is to Connor. It's quite an inflammatory one, maybe. Should Republicans just have to make peace with the communists and socialists in the party? MAGA is a cancer in the Republican Party. Democrats aren't okay with the communists in the party, but you want us to be okay with MAGA? Is that true, Connor? You want us to be okay with MAGA?
No. I want you to be okay with hopefully the post MAGA consensus. And I brought this up last night, and I understand it's a little bit idealistic. It's a little overly vague, but I still want people to seriously consider it. I think that what is pushing radicalism in the United States is wealth inequality, rapid demographic change, existential technological shifts, and the dissolution of the social fabric. I think if you think about those four reasons, they can kind of be tied to like the vast majority of problems that people bitch about on the internet almost every single day. And so effectively, like what's going to happen is those are the things that motivated the radicalism of Trump.
I have to.
Those are the things that, in my opinion, are motivating people to pursue socialism and communism. And so if we want to keep a liberal republic with mixed economy capitalism, and we're serious about that prospect, we have to start addressing those issues. And so once Trump's gone, hopefully there is not another cult leader that can take his place. That alliance is going to fracture.
No, I disagree with Connor. I think that there has to be more. I think there has to be more accountability than just beyond when Trump is gone, right? Because remember that the rot goes deeper than Trump, and I think that this is why your eyes are blue. Are they?
And then if you want those people to become a part of your political movement, you're going to have actual solutions for those people, or at least speak to those issues. Donald Trump doesn't have real solutions to these problems. He just speaks to these issues. But at minimum, you're going to have to speak to these issues. At maximum, you're going to have solutions.
Okay, my own question. Is that cope? It could be. Reason, what do you have?
I'm kind of shocked by Connor's response because of how much I like it. And it wouldn't be fair for me to say this somewhat behind his back without saying it to his.
Oh yeah. Oh right. What I was gonna say. What I was gonna say is, we can't arrive at a proper. We can't arrive at a proper solution because I am with the Never Trumpers. Okay, listen. Okay, I fucking love the Never Trumpers in a way. Okay, in a way, I like the Never Trumpers. Okay, I think that it's always more helpful to have people than it is not to have people. Right. It's better to have people on your side than it is to not have people on your side, right? But at the end of the day, I think that one of the biggest things that they will disagree with me on is how much is the Republican Party overall, like the old Republican Party overall, responsible for Trump's rise to power, right? Because in my opinion, after Trump is out, I think that it's time to go after the Republican Party overall. Because I think it is due to their actions and possibly the Democrats' actions of how we got this much of a breach into the government. I don't think this breach is acceptable. I don't think it should ever happen again. And in order to prevent it, it's time to go after everyone. It's time for there to be a witch hunt. It has to happen. It's the only way.
Face, but sometimes you really
You can't just punish even if you punish everyone. Even if you punish everyone. Sorry, even if you punish Trump and you punish all the people who follow Trump, the rock goes deeper than that, right? The rock goes deeper than that. It really does.
do sound like a Democrat in Republicans' clothing. You're talking about wage inequality as a cause of.
Connor is not a Republican. Do you know what a Republican is? A Republican is a Trumper. That is what a Republican means these days. Okay? A Republican is a Trumper. Fuck! I actually did not save the fucking cool fucking data thing. Fuck me. Never mind.
The strife in America, and not just in America, you look at statistically across the Western world, or the decoupling of wage growth from GDP growth, and but I think an even more important factor is this discrepancy between the poorest and the richest.
I will never beat the difficulty for at this rate, dude. America, fuck me.
It was taken
fuck
from
this
1970s,
difficulty.
The minimum wage, the spending power.
Do you know how many attempts I'm in now?
Of the minimum wage is 73% of the minimum wage in one of the years in the 70s. Forgive me for getting that statistic. So you can see that the people on the minimum wage, their spending power is now 73%, but the average wage has increased, almost doubled. So that means that they're competing against the middle class that's got more than 200% of their spending power. And that kind of dictates what people have, right? Whether it be mobile phones and laptops and such like. It's hard if you're on that end of the spectrum, and you don't see that from just looking at the average wage. So if you say, oh, look at the mean wage, yeah, but that's not looking at the distribution. So the fact that you brought up this point is a really, really important one. And I also agree that I think it's fueling the far left as a simplistic solution. Ironically, like the right have simplistic solutions around, getting rid of migrants. The left have simplistic solutions by putting billionaires in prison, right? And so both of these extremes are being fueled. And I think this is an example of the course, but I really feel like you're a part of the center left when you say that. And I'd love to welcome you there.
Connor is in denial, okay? When someone as old as Connor, he's a father, right? Fathers are stubborn, okay? And they're kind of dumb, all right? They're pretty stubborn people, okay?
Well, here.
They'll be in denial.
Well, you guys.
Probably for the rest of their life, actually.
If you guys want me on the center left, you're going to have to become a little bit more racist, and you're going to have to like guns more. But just addressing that.
Hey, I love guns. I'm kind of happy in Europe.
Never mind.
It's a bit hard to get hold of them, but the first thing I'd do if I went to the States would be to go to a gun range with you guys. It looks
if you're
damn
ever
fun.
hit me up. But addressing this though, I think that if you look at the right wing, so even if you're talking about Fuentes.
Oh wait, I never ordered food. No wonder I was so fleshy during all. Wait, but it shouldn't like be too crazy. Is there anyone that raises? Is there any one of them that raises like increased passion damage amount? Okay, yes, this one. Oh my god.
Or you're talking about Trump. They've used economic populism with which.
Oh my god, let me eat this shit.
Excuse me, their populism. And I think that conservatives and Republicans, so the Republican project, or at least the philosophy as I've been explained it, is that we believe that like the elites or whatever, we should elect the best amongst us to craft technocratically competent policy that makes a healthy, happy, thriving republic. That's at least the idea behind republicanism. And by the way, like republicanism, actually, like the Irish Republicans, I'm pretty sure are socialist, right? They believe in a republic, but their economics are socialist. So actually, economics can be a broad array within.
A martini, shaken, not stirred.
Foods, please help. I listened to X33 Rainer X17.
What does X17 mean? What do you mean by that? Renoir? Or except what does that mean? What do you mean by that? Thank you for £2 though.
Republican philosophy. But I agree with you that historically, especially in the United States, the Republicans are typically more laissez-faire economics.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think we can all recognize that there's an
summary of food shots watching last night with debate. God, you can even hear it. When food shop sees an unsucked destiny cock, bro. Okay, thanks.
To political radicalism in order to try to solve their problems. And so my options
17
are
times?
make
Oh,
sure that the
base.
working class have a
I mean, that's worth
dignified
it.
life, which is probably a moral good anyways, or it's allow the underclass to continue to suffer and then either turn to fascism or communism in order to alleviate their suffering. So for me, if it's providing working class people a dignified life, I would rather do that than fall into a fascist or communist society.
Interesting.
So just to clarify, Connor, because you started to answer a question I had for you. So are you saying that in hindsight that our system, and I'm not even saying whether Democrats or Republicans, and it's the same in Europe, that in some respects, for example, some levels of it could be market control or the cost of living, for example, that there could have been a little bit more state intervention to kind of address the lowest ebb of poverty? In hindsight, I mean,
weirdly enough, I think it's needed now. So just as an example, the 2008 financial crisis was spurred on by housing development being subsidized by the government. I would argue that we need that now, even if it creates a new bubble and implodes. Like, we need state intervention in the economy in order to, like, what is it? Socialism. Okay. So I've done a lot of studying of a lot of political philosophies. I'll try to keep this brief. Socialism, the moral predicate of socialism is they're trying to alleviate the oppressions of capitalism. That's like, if you look at pre-Marxian socialism, that's what they're trying to do. Okay. So if you, as a capitalist who believes in entrepreneurship, private property rights, all that kind of stuff, if you believe in capitalism generally, you can't let the oppressions of capitalism become so grievous that the population turns to socialism or fascism in order to escape the oppressions of socialism, or excuse me, the oppressions of capitalism. So it's actually like, again, trying to be brief.
Oh my god, he's doing the yap thing, dude. He's doing the thing where he goes on long tirades about socialism and communism and capitalism, and no one wants to listen to that shit, dude. He always does this. Why does he always do this, dude? He constantly does this where he's like, okay, anyway, here's my fucking thesis. Like, what? Did anyone ask for this thesis? Like,
it's like the communist statement of, like, the capitalists will sell us the last rope with which we will hang him. And that's what I feel like American capitalists are right now, where they've gutted the social safety net so aggressively. They've allowed the working class to immiserate so badly that anyone who just thinks that tax cuts and deregulation are going to solve our problems, they're effectively coping.
Well, okay.
Just so you know, nobody asked. Okay? Just want to let you guys know that literally nobody asked.
Before you respond, let me come in here real quick. I'm going to go ahead and close this out. And if we have more questions or more discussion to do after that, that's totally fine. But I have a whole lot of billing and lawyer work to go do. Hard out at 2. So I'm sorry, 1. So I'm going to go ahead and close this out. So I'm going to first thank everybody for coming. Parties, both of y'all did a great
Wow, thanks for the flex, Kafka. Yes, we know that we aren't lawyers.
job today, keeping it civil, and that really helped us get to kind of the root of the question. I think that for me, I think that tit for tat is a strategy that can be useful politically, and I think that both sides are going to be in agreement and happy to say that. I think that what we came to and kind of the caveats you made here really make it so that we can understand what tit for tat means, what it doesn't mean, and why it should be used effectively in our current political environment. That being said, everybody in the chat, thank you for your questions and watching with us. This is our 3rd episode of this, and we've really enjoyed doing it. Zip and I are really trying hard to find a way to get our schedules to where we can make this a more regular thing, and trying to find more people to come on and do it. So
we'll take on less cases. Now it's auto playing. Verso, please help. Okay, you're a weirdo, but I appreciate that. Okay, I want Verso to suffer. So good, thank you. I mean, I guess. You might be a little bit too far gone, though. Dude.
We don't need you to be big and famous like Counterpoints here. You can be just a chatter. If you find somebody...
Stop taking on cases. It's really as simple as that. Stop taking on cases. Sometimes you just take on too many cases, okay?
that you think would be fun to have a debate with, that would be a good time for you to come on and have this back and forth, bring them to us. We don't mind. We'd love to bring some people on. And even if it's a smaller idea or maybe not as big and important, I'm going to do some quick plugs real quick. Everybody go and read the Pragmatic Papers. We got some great stuff out there. We'd really love it if you came by. Me and Reason Riffs both are pretty regular contributors to it. And it's really just a good way for TGG to stay informed.
I actually wrote about game theory in my last article, and that was published yesterday. So,
yeah, we have a new volume.
Oh, he writes for the Pragmatic Papers thing, right? What the fuck is the Pragmatic Papers? Like, am I the only one where it's like, I don't even know what the fuck they're about?
Volume out, and Reason Riff's most recent article actually addresses some of the things we discussed here today. So that actually be a good follow-up, maybe kind of fill in some holes if you had any. I'm also gonna shout out to.
Has anyone read the Pragmatic Papers? I'd be curious. Like, I'm curious if anybody reads them.
Let's see. I've been asked to shout out The Bunker and to the Gilmore and Gondam, I'm saying that name right, podcast. They asked me to shout that out so that you guys can go and listen. They actually put out some good stuff from time to time. They have some pretty cool interviews and discussions. So I recommend you'll go listen to that. With that, I'm going to go ahead and adjourn the courts. Y'all, that does not mean that it has to end now. It just means that I'm leaving to go change out of this robe. So again, everybody, y'all have a great day. Connor, it was great to meet you.
Pleasure.
Reason Riffs, was great to see you again, and Zip. When we're forced to work together like this, I can stand it. So hopefully do it well. But yeah, we'll have a great one.
Always an honor being your bailiff.
A big thanks to you, man, for
Yes.
being a fair judge. And
Well, easy for you to say. But,
I'm sure you'll blast me later for what I've said. But
oh yeah.
Wait, but who won? Who won? Pragmatic Paper cuts into supposed to be Destiny's thing, but he never tries to promote it, never reads it, only half-heartedly has Kafka on to talk about it. What's so funny is that it just didn't become Destiny's thing. Like, Destiny, he was originally a writer, right? Like, he wrote about shit on the Pragmatic, like, he only wrote like one thing, but then he got lazy because Steven's gonna do Steven things. Like, be lazy and not do anything.
Yeah, have a good one. Bye.
Yeah,
See,
I mean,
Wow.
Yeah, I'll
What a
just
guy.
I'll hang out for a second if you guys want.
Sure.
All I was gonna say though is like the same way that people have said, like, so for instance, Nancy Pelosi got a lot of shit for saying like,
you want for that? You want what? What do you mean?
oh, we need like a strong, sane right wing for a healthy American society, and I do view conservatism. So like I've read a biography about Burke.
No, it does not. Fuck the right wing.
Burkean conservatism, as far as I understand it, is effectively like a reaction to the French
But you think you'll at least read the articles on stream? Hell
Revolution,
no.
where effectively what happened was the rigid traditionalists who were supporting the French monarchy and supporting the church were so brittle and so resistant to reform that they
Oh my. Okay, is the rest of this gonna be yap, or are they actually gonna debate? Is the rest of this gonna be yap, or are they actually gonna debate, or should I just like sign off the stream right now?
effectively radicalized a
My
zealous base, and that radicalized left wing is what ushered in the reign of terror.
I'm not a DGer. It's like political papers. It's like papers about society. You know?
And so Edmund Burke saw that and he was like, damn, that's super fucked up. I don't want the monarchy and the current government in England to get overthrown. So as a result, we need to figure out a new system.
Asian or Vietnamese? What? Is Vietnamese not Asian or?
And I don't know if he ever even called it conservatism. I don't even know if he ever named it. But he effectively, at least the way that I've heard it interpreted by the book, is that it's like, it is the job of a conservative to presume the status quo, to presume institutions, because institutions and the status quo were not built in a moment. They were built over centuries or millennia of tradition. However, progressives and liberals, people who are emphatic on justice and freedom, they will have criticisms of the establishment. It's the role of the conservative to needle, critique, and question these reform suggestions. That way the bad ones die and the good ones rise to the
Maybe there just simply doesn't need to be a conservative party, and conservatives are just a bunch of old white men who has nothing good to contribute to the world.
top, and then the good ideas are implemented incrementally. And so some people have said that conservatism, what is conservatism conserved? And also conservatism is just progressivism doing the speed limit. I don't view those as insults. I actually think that's like
I play any Final Fantasy games? 14.
almost an accurate
Yeah.
description of Burke.
It's in the term, you conserve versus the progressive who's trying to progress. and it'll naturally be an adversarial thing, even if you are progressing. The conservatives, trying to conserve and just limiting whatever progress wants to be made.
Imagine wanting a conservative party, bro. I can't, dude. One counterpoints is too much. Okay, one counterpoints is too much. Okay, I can only handle so much before I break. Okay, that sounds weird.
I mean, of
Not
course,
like
that only works if there's a respect across the aisle, right? That people are actually listening to each other's arguments, and it's not just a shout fest that a lot of our political systems have become. And of course, the big Republican elephant in the room is the right-wing media, and it's just trampling all over our ability to have that reasonable discussion. It's fueling this polarization, this hatred towards politicians, and I think a lot of politicians have a lot of blame. And okay, the MAGA politicians are crazy, but in generally blaming all politicians all the same. This mentality, their lives are under this crazy magnifying glass, and then they're just burnt by the sun because the media just takes some joy in it and it creates controversy. So I think we need a little bit more respect across the aisle in that regard for it to work. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
As somebody who's working in alt media, there's a perverse.
You need respect from the Republicans, because Democrats have done nothing but give the Republicans respect all the time. Okay, so let's be very clear. Okay, it's not mutual respect. Okay, it's repaid respect. It's reparational respect. Okay, it's like playing. It's like doing black people reparations, right? Give Democrats the respect that they deserve, bitch. Specifically with the bitch part, by the way. Okay, you have to say it forcefully.
Incentive, obviously, to be sensational and to have the hot takes. I think it's why Steven's successful. I think why Nick Fuentes is successful. I think it's why Hassan Piker is successful too.
Is Steven successful?
Agreed.
True.
And I do see the perverse incentive for the media, where particularly if you have a sensational program, everybody's like Piers Morgan, people are going to be like, oh, you had Andrew Tate on, you're a fucking piece of shit. But guess what the views are going to say? The views are going to say 2 million views, freaking $20,000 in ad revenue in 24 hours. That's what, so realistically, even with my chat, there's a perverse incentive to piss off my chat. Sometimes they complain. They're like, God, please no, I don't want to watch this content. This guy sucks. He's infuriating. He's a piece of shit. But you know what happens statistically? Chat is popping off. Super chats are rolling in because they're so mad. They love to hate the thing that they're looking at. And so
he's right.
It's disappointing. We didn't disagree enough today. I mean,
that's fine.
But I mean,
we'll talk about immigration sometime. So but I do want to.
Okay, we can talk about immigration. Let's go for it.
But I did want to hit this real quick. So I think that in our current political moment, there were things that set off the right wing that maybe they don't want to admit. And what I would say is, I don't think the reaction to Obama matched Obama as a president.
Obama.
Like I don't think that
Okay, stop. Okay, all right, never mind. Okay, okay, never mind. I take it back. Okay, I regret saying that.
The counter reaction to Obama actually matches. We passed the Affordable Care Act. That doesn't make sense to me. And then same thing with trans people, trans kids, trans rights, trans this, trans that. I also don't think the political backlash meets the political moment of what's actually happening. But it seems like there's a lot of energy contained and resentment within the right wing, where effectively having a black president, cool that we had a black president, but realistically, I don't know if the country was ready for that. And then also the conversation around trans stuff, I don't know if the country was ready for that. And so
what are you talking about? Okay. How about the rest of the country catch up to the Western world? Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Fuel that has fueled the right over the past 5 to 10 years.
What do you mean when you say the country wasn't ready for that? Because Obama won.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what the fuck? You're not ready for a black president? Dude, what the fuck, dude? What is wrong with you, bro?
Very handily in his elections,
Hello?
right? Unless you're using it in a different way, meaning that the people who didn't vote for him weren't ready for it, or there were people who voted for
There's always going to be people who are not ready for
him that were not actually ready for it, even if they thought they were. How do you mean that they were?
I think it was rocket fuel for Trump, because remember, Trump was like,
bro, are you actually kidding? Dude, he's actually a victim blamer. Like, Connor is just unironically a victim blamer, dude. He's like, yeah, it's Obama's fault that Trump is in power? What the? Dude. Bro, dude, I want whatever Connor is having, okay? Whatever Connor is having must be some dope-ass shit.
A birther conspiracy theorist. Sure. He probably said like Obama was like the worst, weakest president who'd ever ruled, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you also have to bear in mind within the American electorate that 1/3 votes left, 1/3 votes right, 1/3.
Well, he's a conservative. No. He's a liberal.
Doesn't vote at all. And so also Trump allegedly energized a lot of typical non-voters through populist rhetoric. So yeah.
Sure.
I mean, it's a bit paradoxical though, right? Like if Obama was never elected, then it's also about normalizing these things. And I would delineate between, the trans rights, which is a bit more of a complicated hot topic, and just having a black president, which should be just having a black president rather than it being some kind of crazy thing. At some point, you needed to have a black president, otherwise it would just frankly never happen. So it hasn't worked out, and it's a whole host of reasons. But I think it needed to be done, frankly. And I think that in isolation wouldn't have caused Trump. I think there's other things at play, and some of them you've highlighted yourself. So I don't really see that as being, and especially such a gifted orator as Obama.
Well, no, we were lucky that he was like, I don't even know if he was Ivy League, but we were lucky that he was like Ivy League educated.
Yeah, Harvard,
Hey,
right?
the
Yeah.
whole world.
You know Connor is racist, but you can't prove it. That's where I am right now. Sorry, no, hold on. He doesn't even hide it, right? He says that he is like a little racist. Okay, never mind. Sorry, when you know that Connor is saying this because of his racism towards black people, but you can't prove it. There you go.
World envied America for that leader. The way he spoke. And if you look, there's a real interesting statistic about the vocabulary use of presidents. And decade by decade have been dropping. And then Obama gets into power, and you look at that graph, and it's the big anomaly, the big, beautiful anomaly. And Obama's breadth of the and use of the English language, it was poetry sometimes.
And then afterwards, what do we get?
The funny thing, though, is watching George W. Bush speeches now and George W. Bush interviews, because he was deemed he was the dumb president.
Stop rating me, please. Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for the raids. Okay, but I'm gonna log off. Okay, I gotta go to bed.